OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Whoa. And I do look after my teeth.
Whoa. There you go.
You can tell, Colm.
Is this too much information territory, or is this exactly what you've got to give the people what they want, Colm?
No,
I wasn't expecting that.
I was just saying.
Good morning to everybody. It's 7:30.
How are you? I was just saying there to my colleagues, Ger and Shane. I have a thing about watching people brush their teeth, in that I can't.
A phobia.
I can't. Yeah, I have exactly a phobia, rather than a thing. To get more technical about it, I cannot watch anyone brush their teeth, including myself. Can't even look at myself in the mirror. And when it's because of the foam.
The foam.
Yeah. I don't mind even the word toothpaste sends a shiver down my spine.
Are you serious?
Yeah. But I must stress, I look after my teeth very well, I'll have you know. So there's no problem there with the hygiene aspect.
You never look at it.
But
you
the
never
visual.
Look at the foam. It's the foaming at the mouth thing. There's some kind of like.
Eyes and brush your teeth.
Because the boy Hannon here says to me, you don't mind me saying this, do you?
Not at all.
That he would sometimes, occasionally, share a toothbrush with his brother.
Now, the funny thing is, this could be news to my brother. This could be so. If you're watching this morning, there was one day I said to Dara, it was a joke, it was like a trend on TikTok. I said, Dara, where's our toothbrush? And he shouted out, what? Where's our toothbrush gone? He said, what the do you mean our toothbrush? Where's your toothbrush? So yeah, that struck a chord with him.
You have a ridiculously tight-knit family.
Quite tight-knit, yeah. We're all very similar ages. It's two.
Share. Or maybe it's better to share when you're closer in age.
No, we actually don't really share, but like it's an emergency situations, you know.
This is a real thing. Odontophobia.
Oh,
odontophobia.
I never looked at it. I wouldn't even Google it.
And so is this everybody? Like even your wife?
I did say, I can't look at anyone. It doesn't matter who you are.
So you can't share a bathroom then?
No, she'll be like, I'm brushing my teeth, I'll close the door now. Like, yeah, great.
That is.
Yeah. And she understands. Immediately she understood this.
Right.
Thankfully she never watches this, so this is totally, I can say that.
And how soon into dating did you tell her this
I think she got the hint very quickly when I was like, freaked out, like, you can't do it. And I wouldn't even look up now at myself, like, it's a real problem. But then again, and you know what's weird?
If you've got everything.
No, I just know by feel. And also, the other thing as well is I actually don't even mind the dentist that much. You know, people have a huge fear of the dentist. I tolerate it. I don't like it, but I tolerate it. So it's just just the brushing.
Do you get your lollipop at the end as well?
It's the visual. Why would they give you a lollipop in a dentist? Because it negates the whole.
You're a good boy. You didn't cry for the dentist.
It negates the whole health of the teeth. If you're going to give you sugar straight away.
I also have to apologise to everybody, to the annoyed producer and to all my colleagues for not wearing green today. I did get the memo, I just forgot.
This is a joke, by the way.
It was difficult. But great Baldoyle United shirt there, says Fergus. Ger Shane takes me back.
Yeah, it's, what does it say?
What is it?
Easy Soul Athletics. Plug to them, whoever they are. But yeah, it's kind of like giving me Celtic retro vibes. But
Penny's finest.
It's actually not pennies. Is it? Oh, maybe it is pennies.
I don't know.
It could be. It could well be pennies.
Sounds like a made up
name.
That
sounds like yeah.
I've noticed the loose fit is coming back into fashion.
Quite a loose fit, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed with all the young'uns.
You're wearing the camouflage green.
Yeah, I nearly forgot to. Myself and Emma Carroll out there.
So this is a disgrace, by the way. It's not like
it is a form of green.
It'd be bad enough if we just came in today and didn't wear green, but the fact that we planned it was like, oh yeah. It was on the WhatsApps last night. Yeah, let's wear green tomorrow. It's the show before Paddy's Day.
If anything, I texted too early about it.
That WhatsApp.
I texted too early about it. You know.
Too early, right?
See, if you're in a group of 3 people on WhatsApp, like, it's very hard to avoid communication because I'll see that you've read it.
I put a reminder on my phone for this morning when I woke up. I was
That's
like,
good.
wear
That's
green.
Good of you. Yeah. It's good to be organised as a presenter, isn't it?
That's, you know what? It pays off, doesn't it? Because then you get to wear green, represent your country, be patriotic.
Sorry, we're chatting here as if there was no sport last night. Well, there's so much happening.
Yeah, it was a reasonable effort from Liverpool, but like,
was it?
I think so. What else are you going to do? You're up against. I mean, the reason you're 5-2 down is because you're up against a really, really, really good team.
There is that. Yeah. But I mean, they needed to score 3 times and they didn't score at all. Like,
I know, well, correct.
But like, no, but like
your old school punditry.
No, but if you have you have James Milner on the pitch. You have James Milner on the pitch, and you're trying to beat Real Madrid by 3 goals at the Bernabeu.
If we could somehow live in one of your alternative dimensions where actually Jose Mourinho is the manager, he would literally be pointing up to the director's box at Milner and going, "This is your fault. So you did this to us. So maybe Klopp is doing the same thing, except in his more polite manner, more sophisticated, more urbane manner. It's like, I've got James Milner out there, lads. They have Vinicius Jr.
Rio Ferdinand was making the point last night that a lot of Liverpool's acquisitions in recent years just aren't part of their starting plans. Then they buy players and then they bypass the players. They're sitting on the bench for large swathes of the season, which is not good. Like,
well, there was such a period of time where everything hit, where all the recruitment was so spectacular that carried them to a league and carried them to a Champions League, and since then it has been, in and out at best, hit and miss.
Why is he taking off Darwin Núñez in the second half?
I don't know.
I thought Darwin Núñez was sorry. I thought he was excellent in the first half. He scored twice. Put in through and goal in the 7th minute when Danny Carvajal had an overhit pass back to Antonio Rudiger. Mo Salah intercepted, couldn't quite get away himself, so fed in Núñez, who had a decent, like one of his kind of rasping shots that aren't particularly well directed, but like have power. But straight at Courtois, who you just realise the difference between a world-class goalkeeper and the rest, in that he makes so many shots seem average when actually they're quite good.
Alisson too.
He has, both of them are excellent. Like especially in the first half, there were 18 shots between both teams going in 0-0 at half time. It was remarkable that the game was scoreless at the interval, and both keepers, as you say, Shane, pulled off a string of great saves, but Liverpool had to score that goal in the 7th minute. And from then on in, it was really Real Madrid who came closest. Like Luka Modric had a great shot which just went over. Camavinga, did you see that left-footed shot? Slight deflection off James Milner and a little touch from Alisson onto the crossbar.
That's some save.
But Camavinga is some player. Like, I know Casemiro is the one who asked to leave Real Madrid. They don't want to lose him. But when you have Camavinga stepping into the Casemiro role, like you're doing quite well.
Pretty good.
And you just realise how strong that Madrid squad is when they're bringing on Chouameni, who played every single game for France at the World Cup. The only outfield player to start every game. And he comes on towards the end of the match. You have Marco Asensio, who 6 years ago, around 2016-17, was seen as the next great Spanish striker. He can only come on now these days. And yet they're 9 points behind Barcelona in La Liga with the Clásico happening this Sunday night. But I was watching it last night thinking, geez lads, will we have to change the running order tomorrow? Will this be another Liverpool historical European night? But this was no Barcelona 2019. Real Madrid 2023 are a different kettle of fish altogether. And Madrid, in general, have their number over Liverpool, with the exception of 2019 when Liverpool won the Champions League against Tottenham. They've been eliminated the last 6 years at the hands of Real, mostly 2 finals, a quarter-final, last 16, and Atletico in the COVID year, when COVID literally broke out 2020, and they lost to Atletico at Anfield. So they have this Madrid voodoo that Klopp cannot get over.
Luka Modric.
They did
another bit of great punditry here. Luka Modric is a good footballer.
He is good at football.
And they won the Champions League in Madrid.
They did.
Which is nice of them.
They did. So there's a little caveat to that. Look, if the game was over, I thought that the first half was interesting and exciting, and then they just needed to score immediately at the start of the second half, and they couldn't do that, and then it was game over.
Yeah, if it got to 2, it would have been exciting, really interesting, because then you'd almost fancy Liverpool at that stage.
Isn't the real story from last night that Napoli are going to win this thing, and that's going to be one of the greatest stories since Porto winning it?
Napoli. Yeah. I mean, they had problems before the game to see all the crowd.
I actually missed it. I saw headlines. I didn't see.
Eintracht Frankfurt's ultras came into town, and it got real messy, and there was a good few viral clips on social actually of just kind of everything you would imagine that would happen in a brawl between a set of fans outside the stadium. But luckily the football started and the game went ahead as normal. But like you say, like they're absolutely flying it in Serie A, and they made Eintracht Frankfurt look very ordinary. I'm not saying Frankfurt are a great side or anything, but they're much better than what they looked last night, and that was purely down to Napoli.
And there's a chance they can keep the team together. This isn't that great Monaco side where Mbappe, you knew, was going to get picked off, and all the rest of his good teammates were going to get picked off as well. They're going to win the league. They have owners who can afford to pay everybody the bonuses they need. They're deep in the Champions League now, and if they get a good draw, they could go all the way to the final.
Yeah, but then the likes of Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia, if they win Serie A, which they will win Serie A, and go deep in the Champions League, and they're not going to then go, well, we've kind of hit a plateau here. Well, what more are we going to do with Napoli?
You could win a Champions League. You could do what Maradona couldn't do.
You could definitely join a bigger European side and have a better chance of winning the Champions League.
I usually think there's a ceiling with teams like this where they unexpectedly perform very well, but if you look at Napoli, like if you want to stay in Italy and play your football in Serie A, there's no better side than Napoli. Why would you leave? Unless it's money.
Is this Napoli's Leicester City year, or is that?
No, that's what I mean. That's exactly what I was thinking when I said that. Leicester City, like I remember thinking Leicester City should have taken the next season off if that was at all possible, because they were never going to do as well as they did that year. But with Napoli, it's different. Like you're talking about more than just say Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez. for Leicester. They have a whole host of brilliant players and potentially
Kante.
2 or 3 world-class one. And N'Golo Kante, which we'll get to later on in the show.
I can't believe you're forgetting N'Golo Kante.
Segue.
He's only there for a year. I know, yeah, that's true. I did forget him. And you know what's mad about Kante that year? He was a squad player originally. Only played 1 season at Leicester, and they played him on the left wing. Claudio Ranieri played him on the left when they brought him on. And then within 6 months, you're talking about one of the greatest holding midfielders, or actually, all-round midfielders.
Did he win Premier League Player of the Year?
He didn't, no.
Did he not?
This up yesterday. Mahrez and Vardy got the 2 awards.
Oh,
now, Mahrez got the players and Vardy got the football writers.
Right.
I don't know if anybody cares about the football writers. I guess you show up in your tux and you take it, but everybody... It's the Players Award is the one that everybody talks about, and it was Riyad Mahrez who got that. So, I don't know.
Sorry, can we talk about Crystal Palace? We don't ever talk about Palace.
That was not what I was expecting.
Right.
To say
Sorry,
there.
can we talk about Crystal Palace, right? Because when we were talking about the relegation battle 8 weeks ago, I got lambasted by the commenters and some of the people in the studio when I was like, "Oh, Palace aren't safe. They're definitely not safe. They could easily sink like a stone." I'm not saying I told you so, but I told you so.
Told me the Newcastle are going to finish 4th this year, definitely.
Well, there's still a chance of that.
We'll wait to see if that happens. We'll wait. But I just wanted to say about Palace, right? Before
That's a
on.
lie, by the way. And when the lies are made, you need to call them out early and often. That's a
Luckily,
lie.
there's a clip of that somewhere. I'll find it.
Someone's lying.
Someone's lying, yeah. Frantically Googling. Someone's lying. Now, Palace, right? As Emma's just reminded me here, we have live commentary of Palace's trip to Arsenal this Sunday. But the reason I brought them up, right, there it is on screen. They're 12th, Crystal Palace. They haven't won a game
now as well.
in 2023. New Year's Eve, they went to Bournemouth and won 2-0. They have not won a game this year, and they're 12th. That, like, the Premier League table is nuts. And also, Palace finally got a shot on target last night in the derby defeat to Brighton and Hove Albion, because the 3 games prior, they didn't have a single shot on target in the Premier League for 3 games in a row. I'm just saying, Patrick Vieira had a great start as Crystal Palace manager, but I think he's getting away with it a little bit in comparison to Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard and other great former midfielders turned managers. That Vieira and Palace are kind of going under the radar. But at the same time, I've heard 1 or 2 more people say that now, and maybe it's getting to the point where people are like, when they used to say James Milner's underrated, and so many people said it, that he became rated.
Well, he's under pressure. That was the story that broke in the last 2 days. Essentially, you've got to start winning games or we're going to fire you. Like, so I would say he's most likely to be fired next, because everybody else is actually managing to get results and win games and go on a mini run, and then before, we see them have bad form. So, so who's
the only thing though?
He's got to go. You think he should go? Basically, is what you're saying, Colm?
No, I see. The thing with Palace is they don't get hammered.
They keep losing 1-0.
They do not get hammered, and like Phil Egan was making the point this morning in the office, and it's very true. Like, because they're not getting hammered, they're not standing out. They're just losing by the occasional odd goal.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's like, oh well, it's Palace, and what more do you expect? But it's just the fact that the confidence must be completely drained from them, and it's not like they don't have talent in that final third.
Yeah, but sometimes for a team like that, all you need is the international break, and now they've got it. And like their fixtures afterwards are not that. Well, they've got Arsenal away first of all, which is obviously a tough one. But then Leicester home, Leeds away, Southampton away, Everton home.
But they're not getting shots on target.
I know, but
they're all 6 pointers though.
They are massive games. Jesus, yeah, 100%.
The sack race, if you're interested, the odds on the next Premier League manager to leave their club: David Moyes is still favoured at 13-8. Patrick Vieira is 5-2. Antonio Conte is 5-2. Rogers is 5-1. No manager to leave for the rest of the season is 20-1. I wouldn't be taking no manager to leave at this stage. Someone's going to panic. But I don't think Rogers is going to go, because that would all have happened before now. Conte, I think, is probably going to see the end of the season out, because they would have made the move after the European game if they thought they were going to make that move. Maybe the international break gives them an opportunity to have the conversation with Enrique and Tuchel and whoever. But I do feel like if you're the manager coming in, you want the off-season and you want the Harry Kane situation to be sorted one way or another and not be. I realise that that's not what Martin Lipton told us on the show. I disagree. And then it's Vieira or Moyes. And Moyes, if they lose tonight in Europe or get a bad result tonight, you can see that happening immediately. But if they win, that's a stay of execution. So Patrick Vieira, come on down, baby. You next.
Join us. Yeah, no, I think Palace will be okay. Genuinely.
They might be fine. I'm sure there are 3 worse teams than Crystal Palace, but staying up by default isn't exactly inspiring.
Are there 3 worse teams at the moment?
I think Southampton are going to go.
Literally the bottom 3 at the moment: Bournemouth, Leeds, Southampton.
Yeah, I think that's fair shout. I'm surprised that Wolves are doing well. Julian Lopetegui's done a decent job there. They're 30.
Bournemouth have looked good the last couple of games against Liverpool and Arsenal, but can they keep that going?
It's actually a pretty strong Premier League this season, I have to say, because Southampton were decent in spells at Old Trafford last weekend, and last night they lost 2-0 at home to Brentford, which isn't a great result. Brentford, that's only their third away victory in the Premier League, but Southampton actually dominated that second half particularly. Gavin Bazunu, incidentally, made a fantastic save from Brian Mbeumo at 0-0 after
They're
20
gone.
minutes.
So I do think Southampton are gone. They're starting to become a little bit detached.
Javi Gracia is a good manager. He will get them sorted a bit. They drew 2-2 with Brighton, high-flying Brighton last weekend. They might be okay, but there's probably three worse teams than Palace.
Yeah.
Well, can I just point that out? Like, Palace, for anybody who's unfamiliar with the table at the moment, have 27 points from 27 games played. Leeds have a game in hand and are 4 points behind. Bournemouth are 3 points behind and have a game in hand. West Ham are 3 points behind and have a game in hand. And Southampton are obviously 5 points behind and have played the same number of games. So you'd say Southampton, unless they absolutely go on a mad run, are gone. But everybody else have games in hand and are just 3 points behind. Superior goal difference, but it's plenty of time for Palace to collapse. So I don't know. I ain't writing Palace into the safety books just yet.
No, could be one of the great relegation battles. What was the year? Was it West Brom?
2005. Yeah.
Madness.
West Bromwich Albion stayed up at the expense of who went down?
Give us more of that, please. Come on.
What about Brighton qualifying for the Champions League? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It couldn't happen, but they're right there.
Yeah,
couldn't happen.
No,
I'm not saying it could happen, but they are still sticking around like a bad smell. Evan Ferguson obviously dropped last night. Comes off the bench. Good of him to rest Evan Ferguson
fresh
in advance of the big game against France. Not such good news from Adam Eda's perspective.
No.
Started well. Started on the wing, which is interesting.
Yeah,
that could be a place to get him into the team for Ireland as like that kind of third midfielder style person who's also an outlet ball when you don't have it, and you might need when you're hoofing the ball clear against France to have. There's no. We were talking to Vinny Perth about this. There's no real way to get Eda and Ferguson in the team together, but there might be if you're playing him a bit deeper.
Well, not now.
He made the goal and then comes off injured before half time, so we haven't had an official bulletin yet from Norwich, but
he's
obviously had those knee troubles for a significant period of time. He's had surgery on the knee as well, so
yeah, it is a worry because he did great for the goal, outpaced his full back, cut back on his right foot, beautiful laughed across into the box to two of his teammates actually. Either one of them could have finished.
He can't catch a break. That was a third start in a row and everyone's like, oh, he's back on a roll now, and then the injury happens again. It's like this, Eda just can't catch a break.
Okay, 100% agree with Colm. It's gross. There's a scene in the movie Bring It On where they're brushing together. No need for it.
Well, yeah, obviously use different toothbrushes if you have that option. But I'm just saying, if you're
not about the different toothbrushes, it's about the visual for me.
That's bizarre, I have to say.
It's 7:48 this morning here on OTB AM. If you're listening to us as you brush your teeth, then don't tell Colm. Coming up, Fiona Hayes is standing by. We're going to talk to her right now about Ireland and England. Graham Hunter's with us at 8:10. Vinny Perth is going to join us a little bit after 8:30. We're actually going to John Duggan at 8:30, and then talking Cheltenham. We'll hear from Philippe Auclair on You Had to Be There today as well. And we'll play out some Ian Keatley. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. Right, Fiona Hayes is with us. Fiona, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, good. What's your instinct about how mad the country is getting in advance? I was all for the madness early in the week, and now as the game approaches, I'm like, we might be losing the run of ourselves here a bit.
Look, we have to be a bit confident. It's very Irish not to be confident, isn't it? I suppose after last week's performance and how the lads went under such adversity and played like that, I think that brought the excitement, and it's just continued throughout the week. So, I'm a bit of a calm head, but I'm super excited all week myself thinking about the game on Saturday.
The English team have come over a little bit earlier than usual. Apparently this is how they're going to behave at the World Cup. You've got to be in the city of the game earlier, and they're doing that now to replicate what they're going to be like. So they're going to be soaking up all of our complacency, all of our celebrations, all of our preparations. We can just pretend it's all for St. Patrick's Day. They don't know that it's not, that actually this is all specifically for the rugby this weekend.
Spot on. You can disguise it in Patrick's Day. You're dead right there. Yeah, look, they're coming over. I think obviously they're under Borthwick. They're trying to get their regime and feel their way out going into this World Cup. I'm sure there's no one the players themselves are aware that there will be an English backlash, and like it is to be expected, but I just feel there's such a buzz in the atmosphere, the players and how they're talking, the calmness, especially when we heard, when such adversity, as I said, and at half time they were smiling inside in the dressing room. It just shows you what type of team and squad is there, that anything can hit them, and they're just smiling and they're mentally prepared, and they have their eye on, they know they're the number one ranked team in the world, and that brings added pressure, but they seem to be going into every game just kind of with smiles on their faces and really enjoying it, which is something I haven't seen in an Irish squad in a long time.
The news this morning is that the probable teams all do include Dan Sheehan. Now, we'll wait and see exactly what the team is named, but that would be absolutely massive. Caelan Doris also named to start in the probable teams this morning. And, we've been suggesting the whole way along that people are getting a tip-off from inside the camp when those teams are being put forward. That's like literally the most important news. It's great that we have Robbie Henshaw back, but those two suddenly take us from being a little bit concerned about our strength and depth to having a really strong bench again.
Yeah, look, I mean, Sheehan and Doris, we know exactly what they can bring, and it's that bench that came on in the last game. They came on and done a job, and I think it's the mentality there at the minute that anyone in that squad has the confidence to do that. But I mean, the likes of Dan Sheehan, he's just been outstanding. I think he's only missed one line out so far in all the minutes he's played with Ireland, and I'm sure he blamed the jumpers and lifters for that one. But I mean, his stats are through the roof, and we all know what Doris, I mean, we're talking about him week in, week out. He's just immense as a ball carrier, an out and out 8, and it's something I think England are struggling with themselves. I haven't seen enough from Don Brandt to show me like that he's up there with world class 8. So I think we're haunted with the players we have, but it's the confidence that's in these guys, and it's brilliant to hear that. And I think you're right. I think the general squads that are released, they're normally spot on when it comes to that naming day.
We're expecting Fiona Gibson Park to start at scrum half this weekend. I mean, I thought Conor Murray did well against the Scots, considering there wasn't exactly a normal service from the pack given all the injuries. But it makes sense to put Gibson Park straight back in there for a game of this magnitude.
Absolutely. Look, and in the minutes he played, he made such a huge impact. I mean, it's very easy standing on the outside to say, it was much slower with Murray, but he had to feel his way through the game. They had to find their way. And I think when Gibson Park came on, obviously sitting on the bench, you've loads of energy. He just provided that speed. And I mean, the skill set he showed, that beautiful pass from that break down the wing back inside. He's just a player in form, and Murray has been outstanding and is really fitted into that role. But I think it's the right choice to start to Gibson Park. England like a slow game. They like a kicking game. Their back three will love for the ball to just be coming at them. They're so narrow in their carries. I think Gibson Park will really, really speed up that ruck, and if we can get under 3 second ruck, you'll really cause damage to England out wide, especially because that's where they were caught against the French.
Obviously, the home advantage is a great thing for us. We get to hopefully see a Grand Slam in Dublin. I mean, it's the first on home soil since Ravenhill in 1948, and it's been Cardiff and Twickenham since. I guess we're all looking at the positives of that, Fiona, in that, this is a brilliant opportunity. But then it adds weight to the occasion, I'm sure, as well, for the players. Not saying these players aren't fully capable of dealing with weight on their shoulders like that, but it certainly adds an extra element of pressure to the game.
Oh yeah, huge pressure, especially as you say on Paddy's Day, everyone's going to be out with their hats, their jerseys, everything, and because they've played so well, there isn't even a hint of atmosphere that these guys could lose on the game. But I think the pressure is there, and I think Andy Farrell has provided that mentality in the squad that they're able to deal with. England there will be a backlash. They can't possibly play as bad as they played last week. I mean, as I spoke about, the back row were non-existent. I thought the front row didn't do much. So they would have looked at their stats, and they'll definitely be looking at improving that. But I just don't think that English players, compared to what we have over here at the minute and the form that our guys are in, will be able to really get after Ireland. It probably will be a bit of a slow start, and they will try and slow down the game. But I think the fitness of this Irish team will absolutely shine through. And as we spoke and we saw the bench last week, these guys are going to be chomping at the bit to come on and make a massive impact as well.
The two respective back rows with Doris back in the team, and that's like I think it's a big assumption. I really hope that's true, and that we're not roping open the English into thinking, oh, they're going to have their full team, and then all of a sudden it emerges we don't. And I just who knows, right? I'm sure there's a lot of high stakes poker going on with this stuff. It'd be out of character for Ireland, and so that in itself would be a bit of a change and a bit of a red flag. But if the two back rows are as we expect them to be, can you talk to us a little bit about the respective difference in strength?
Look, I think if we think we're going with, I mean, we know exactly with Doris. If are you comparing the back rows to the Irish back rows to the English back rows? Or? Yeah. So look, I mean, we've got a world class 7. Absolutely, we all know, or should I call him a world class hooker at this stage? But we know exactly what Van der Fleer is capable of. He's just immense, and I think there's a massive difference between himself and Willis. I watched Willis last week. I'm a huge fan. He gets turnovers. He's in the breakdown. He's doing monstrous stuff over in Toulouse. But when I look at Van der Fleer, it's his ability to. He's a smaller kind of back row, but it's his ability. He's sidestep, he can carry around players, he links up so well with the backs, he's able to provide, he's got every part of aspect of his game is just there, and he's so good. And Willis is a devil at the breakdown, and he gets inside there. But last week I was just disappointed. I found that he was sticking his head into a lot of dead rucks. I've seen him doing it a couple of times, and the game just got away from him. And if we're looking at the 8s, I mean, I'm saying world class for Van der Fleer. I think Caelan Doris is on the way up there. He's been brilliant for Ireland so far, and Don Brandt, huge fan as well. I'm watching him with Harlequins the last couple of seasons, and he has the ability to make an impact. But he really disappointed me watching him last week. A lot of players have come out and said, look, you can't blame the 8, you can't blame the back row, but just his carries into contact. I think he caught once from a restart, was stopped. He was already turned, waiting for the contact, and stopped dead at that point. And I think that's the difference between these English guys and our own ball carriers, is we're constantly our back row are getting gain line, and it's due to their footwork. They're able to get around or hitting the soft shoulders, and their link play with the back line, especially with Sexton, Ringrose when he's on, we can see that they're well capable of hands, of passing out the wing. Whereas the back row in England, I don't know if they're coached to do it. I feel like when we see them, and especially if they're coming off a scrum at speed, especially Don Brandt, there's no ability really to pass to a 12. I feel like he just carries straight into contact, and the defence just loves that because they're able to shoot up and stop him dead at source.
The way you're describing that, it sounds like they're still very much conscious about what they're trying to do, and they're like, okay, I'm going to catch this ball and I'm going to do what I did in coaching all week this week, as opposed to I know what I'm doing, and so it's going to be second nature to me. It's that split second of a difference between fully understanding and implementing a game plan that has been well honed over a long period of time to I need to think about what it is that I'm supposed to do to make the coaching staff happy. And that's, I think, the thing that gives us most comfort, is that we're a good bit further down the line than this England team at the moment. The caveat to that, of course, is that they're going to pick a 10, 12 and 13 who have experience of coming to Ireland and pooping a party, where we expected last time they were here, it's like, oh, we're going to win the Grand Slam, then we're going to go out and win the World Cup, and then they blew us apart in the opening 20 minutes of that game. Is that 4 years ago now? Yeah. So Owen Farrell at 10 is what the English papers are saying. Slade at 12, Tuilagi at 12 and Slade at 13. That's the exact same combination. Now, those three can't fix it, but
no,
we're seeing ghosts.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not too worried. I know that there is going to be, as I spoke about earlier, there will be a backlash for the first 20 minutes. I mean, Tuilagi hasn't got much rugby under his belt. He has been injured, then he's been in and out of favour because of those injuries over the years. So he hasn't really got the same connection that I would have seen with Farrell before. Slade, I wouldn't be, not that I'm not a huge fan of him, I wouldn't feel like he's a massive threat, especially in the centre. I think Ireland have a capability to deal with these guys. In the past, England picked these big ball runners, you'd Vunipola at 8 and you had Tuilagi running down the neck of defences. Whereas I think defences have sorted that out now. They're able to chop these guys low, and I think the Irish defence system, in watching them from start to finish this Six Nations, even from the All Blacks from that second game, they just are all on the same sheet. I know that out wide there was connection issues between maybe 13 and James Lowe, but their hustle and their work rate is what sorts that out. They're able to get get across, they're able to bring that line speed because they can get up together. So I think Ireland will definitely, they will know that they're going to be targeting that area, but I don't think these guys have had enough game time together to be able to make such a huge impact.
I think there's a lot been said as well, Fiona, even anytime I've been down at those press conferences in Abbottstown, Gary Keegan's name has come up, the mind guru behind this team, and you can kind of sense it in the build-up, in the press conferences. Like, even they're quite relaxed. Mac Hansen joking about the fact that everybody hates England, quotes that were picked up in the Telegraph this week over the Irish Sea. Even Tyke Furlong saying, if you can't get excited for the game this weekend, then why are you even involved in sport? There seems to be something, even in the words coming out of the players' mouths, that you sense that they're a bit different this year.
Yeah, definitely. And watching them in those press conferences, as I said, they're enjoying their rugby. They look natural. They're able to talk. Obviously, they're well trained in what to say and what not to say. But look, they seem to be confident. And Gary Keane it's with Andy Farrell. He's constantly pushing that mentality and being able to think like champions all the time. You're just focusing on the next game, and I think that's what's really worked for this team, is that they were never looking at a Grand Slam, they were never looking at a World Cup. It was literally every focus when they talk. Obviously the reporter's going to ask them questions about Grand Slams and we're going to win the World Cup now, but it's good for them. They bring it back to earth, and I would imagine Gary Keane has brought that to him. You live in the moment, and they're living in the moment, enjoying their rugby and playing with a smile on their face.
The complacency thing is a real thing, though, right? Like, we are this week looking at everybody asking, can you pay proper testimony to Johnny Sexton like he's dead? And he's not. He's got a match to play this weekend, and the English back row and Tuilagi are going to be targeting him in the first 10-15 minutes to try and spoil our party. So, like, the lads earlier wanted to have a conversation about, should we stop the game whenever
sorry, Fiona,
should we stop the game whenever Sexton breaks the record? Like, maybe we should just win this game and get it done first.
That's my point. That was my point. The whole the record breaking is ridiculous.
Yeah,
in the basketball in the NBA, should they stop the game?
I know, I saw that, and and LeBron, and they all just clap, and I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And they went on and lost the game, didn't they?
Yeah. But it was a regular season game. This is actually there's a big trophy at the end of this. This is the final.
Well, do you think if Sexton kicks a penalty in the first few minutes, I don't think he'll even smirk.
No, the crowd will go mad,
but I don't think he'll even register.
I think sure, he was celebrating the conversions last week.
Yeah,
in a way that we never see.
Because there were points on the board.
I think it means something to him. But anyway,
I agree. I think the game was so tight, and obviously he'd missed that first conversion, so I'd say it was more of a pressure in that tight game. I think he'll just kick it a slight little smile. I remember reading an article, I think it was yesterday, and I thought it was hilarious, and it was about his son, that his son doesn't come onto the pitch if they lose, so we know he's got that he's winning mentality. I think he'll just give a little smirk and be back to business straight away, because that's what Keegan is in there. This is what he's doing with these guys. He knows Tuilagi's going to be running down his channel. He's got to get him mentally prepared, and they've been doing this for a long time now.
So you're not worried about the complacency and the fact that we're celebrating our, like, I think most rugby fans are planning what their Grand Slam party is going to be like. They want to make sure that they're watching this game with like there's just a little bit of this where the whole conversation's now turned to, I hope the players aren't listening to any of this.
Yeah, I don't. I think we're all celebrating, and it's very unusual because normally we're like, we lose the last game. We like to look at the down points, but I think the players, I'd say they're not even listening to. Obviously, you hear the noise around it, and they are. But I really feel like since that New Zealand test, we're looking at a different animal. They're able to deal with that adversity. The players that are available are playing for their provinces week in, week out. Really good rugby. We've had a couple of knocks. We're able to get guys in the squad that are able to continue at the same ability. I mean, the likes of Tom O'Toole, I wouldn't have been speaking about him until this Six Nations, and he's just completely stepped up. So it's like they have this atmosphere in the camp that when you get onto that cauldron, when you get onto the pitch, everyone around you is supporting you, and they just look like they're, as I said, living in that moment and playing. So I firmly believe they know exactly what England are going to bring in. They've spoke about it in all the press conferences. So I'd say they're fully focused, and Andy Farrell will have his game plan down to the T.
All right, Fiona, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
No worries, guys. Thanks a million. See you later.
That's Fiona Hayes giving us her thoughts there. I do see a pathway for England to win this game. I like, we traditionally, when we would have been beating England before we got good, there were, even in the 90s, there was a couple of years where we won games where they were like the Will Carling team, who were cocky, it's fair to say, and expectant of victory. And we would have a smash and grab. The Mick Galway team, they had a smash and grab. We won 2 games back to back in Ireland, obviously not in Twickenham. And Eric Elwood, kicked. Like, do you see a world where we have some significant injuries early in the game caused by the aggression of Manu Tuilagi? I do. I see a world where we suffer our first yellow or red card, because of an accidental something or other.
Yeah, but
I see a world where Farrell kicks the ball into the corners, they snaffle a line out, and all of a sudden they're 7-0 up at halftime or 7-3 up at halftime.
Yeah, but these are all ifs and buts. Like, all of these things have to happen. But this is my point. The path.
That's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible.
The way we're going
it's
on about
highly
it,
unlikely.
It's very.
The pathway to an England win is
not that difficult to see.
It's
Look, their forwards need to be better than our forwards, which would be the first time that's happened. But a tiny bit of complacency, a smidgen of complacency. People listening to, should we stop the game whenever Sexton scores? They're like, imagine if you're the English rugby team this morning listening to this.
Material for the dressing room wall.
Or anyway, I still think that the physicality involved in rugby means that motivation is hugely important. Like,
but the motivation for Ireland is playing for all to see. Like, there's no complacency whatsoever playing England ever.
I hope you're right. I'm just
not for this team.
I don't want to be a complete wet blanket. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that we're not just showing up to pick this trophy up. There is a game that's going to be played in advance of that moment, and fingers crossed it all goes.
You're just being careful in case on Monday morning we come in here and England have won by a point, and it's like, well, I urge complacency.
No,
let's lean into the fact that we're going to batter them.
Look, that's the ideal outcome here, right?
100%, and I think it's actually one of them. It's a more likely outcome than England win. Like a 15-point margin again.
Frequently gets overturned in rugby. Every match that we played against the All Blacks, we would have been double-digit underdogs until the third test even. I'd say we were probably double-digit in the second test, because bear in mind, they spanked us in that first test. They absolutely hammered us. Now, we butchered a lot of chances close to the goal line, and they pretty much scored with their 4 efforts, but we suffered, and we had injuries. So there's a world where this is like a swirly, wet, annoying, miserable day, and their scrum gets some kind of parity. They don't even have to beat us. They just need to get some kind of parity, not be a penalty machine. And it's scoreless after 30 minutes. And the injuries start to clock up.
Yeah.
And we're like, or we've got to go to uncontested scrums and are down a man because of injury. Which just happened.
By the way.
Just happened last week.
Yeah, I know, but hopefully won't strike twice.
Because we outthought the problem.
I'm curious to see what the game management is going to be. If Ireland are 6-0 to the good after a couple of penalties after, say, 20-25 minutes, and then we get a chance to either go for the post or kick for touch, like, what's the decision here? Like, are we going 9-0 up, or are we going for the tries? There's a lot of decisions to be made in game, and I'm fascinated to see what Johnny Sexton opts to do along with the rest of the leadership team in that group. So, Jesus. Let's get behind them. Come on, for fuck's sake. I'm confident.
I am behind them.
No more wet blankets.
I am behind them. I'm looking forward to this. I just want to make sure that we've considered the eventualities.
Let's lean into our Irish lack of self-belief and confidence. We're Irish, so when we bump into someone or someone bumps into us, we say sorry. That's what happens. So let's stop doing that as a nation. Let's just say no. You bumped into me. You say sorry. That's what this Irish team have adopted, that attitude.
Many years of trauma have just been...
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. Talk football. Graham Hunter, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, listen, whenever anybody bumps into me or where I bump, it's always their fault. So, if you really need tutorials and lessons and that whole thing, or indeed send the team to me, I can teach you, don't worry.
He needs to go on a night out with you, Graham.
Sorry.
Life. Just life.
There you go. Well, we start with Real Madrid because obviously they handled their business like a team of professionals last night.
They did, I suppose, but there's two sides to every story. And I was sitting in the press conference last night listening to Jurgen Klopp saying, we needed a really big performance. We didn't give it. Early on, I thought both keepers stood out in making sure that there weren't goals, and really, Courtois' save from Darwin was extremely good, and as such, I felt the tide would have turned had Liverpool scored. In the for some strange reason, there was a relative jitteriness around Madrid, and I don't mean the media. I think that the players aren't used to that. You've got a squad there at Real Madrid who don't really do careful, conservative 0-0s. And in my opinion, they tried to win the game, ultimately got their reward. I thought that Vinicius' little assist just continues to add to his I don't know, legend's far too soon at 22, but to be in front of goal, to kind of flail at the ball and fall over and then stick out a little leg and punt it to Benzema meant eventually a win. But they don't know how to conserve a 3-goal away lead. It's not been their modus operandi recently. Really, since they began to win consecutive Champions Leagues, an example would be 3-0 up against Juventus from Turin, and by the 90th minute it was 3-3, and it was Cristiano gets the goal eventually to send them through. Last night was a really odd experience, an odd challenge for them that it's not really in their repertoire, Ger, and I think we saw that.
We were talking yesterday about Pep and how it's a bit of a privilege to be living through the experience of watching him try and solve the conundrum that he has at the moment of having one of the greatest weapons in the history of football, but not really wanting to use it the way that everybody else thinks he should, and him wrestling with his principles. In a way, what's happening at Madrid is a completely different challenge, but we are living through like a wildness to their play, while at the same time they're harvesting Champions Leagues. It's great that they are so cavalier and attack-minded, and that is the thing that is delivering Champions Leagues, as opposed to a sterile Catenaccio-style Italian football where we're going to win this on penalties after 120 minutes, lads. Let's dig in.
They don't have that. Listen, as somebody who grew up, I'm a lot older than both of you, somebody who grew up watching, Catenaccio football in Europe and the staleness, and also teams that copied that. There was a ripple effect, wasn't there, about do your utmost to draw 0-0 away and then 1-1 at home. As glorious as Nottingham Forest's triumphs were in Europe, some of their games and the final against Hamburg, you couldn't contrast it with what we're seeing today. Utterly glorious, inspirational in its time, but it almost seems a different sport that we're watching now. And you pinpointed Real Madrid about being. It's an enjoyable watch. They're cavalier. I agree with all of that, and they barely have it in the nature to defend in a serious way all over the pitch. It's like they're a little bit Jake LaMotta. It's got to be slug for slug, and if we're on the ropes, that's when we're most dangerous, because there's going to be a flurry of blows. I'm not suggesting that they have no idea at all about how to defend a lead. Had it been a 1-goal advantage from Anfield, I think we'd have seen a lot more, say, shrewdness. I think we'd have seen them tactically more awake. I will say that although they eventually get the goal, by about midway through the second half, they'd shifted down a gear, and it wasn't defending, it wasn't really conservative, but they've looked relatively physically tired as a bunch. That isn't tailing off at the end of games, because I think they've scored something like 9 or 10 goals after the 90th minute in the last 15 matches. Right after the 80th minute, sorry, Ger. But they've got a Classic coming up on Sunday. It will be utterly decisive as to how the league goes if Madrid were to lose. And I thought I saw them conserving energy in terms of the spark, the press, the intensity of their attacks. And eventually they get a goal, and they were consistently playing quick transition balls up through a Liverpool side, which ebbed and flowed in terms of their own energy. I spoke to a lot of ex-professional footballers, whether it be from Spain or from the Premier League, in the build-up to the match. It's a mecca for those who like to spend the time as TV co-commentators or analysts. And everybody said the same, we don't know which Liverpool we're going to see. Something like a version of the one that beat Manchester United, or the one that was pretty rank against Bournemouth, and nor did I. And for that reason, I thought Liverpool really intermittent, and that didn't spark Madrid into life. Had Liverpool really landed 2 or 3 blows quickly, I think we could have seen an enormously good tie. I thought the tie would finish 3-2, shows what I know. nonetheless, Madrid march on, and there was a brilliant moment at the end. I don't know. Neither of you were in the Bernabeu because you had to be up early for the show this morning, and I don't know how much publicity this got in Ireland. But at the end of the match, when there was still a very healthy chunk of the crowd in the stadium, Madrid put on "You'll Never Walk Alone," blasting out through all the speakers all around the stadium. And what's more, the vast majority of the many tens of thousands of Madrid fans who were still in the stadium stood up and applauded. And the reason for that, I think, was a unifying feeling between the two clubs about what they went through in Paris in the Champions League final. But above anything else, when they went to Anfield for that extraordinary, historic game, Amancio, their honorary president, a wonderful, wonderful footballer, a winger, had recently died. And Madrid thought that Liverpool had treated them exceptionally, both behind the scenes and then when they laid the floral tribute. And therefore, whoever it was just had the idea about playing "You'll Never Walk Alone." But nobody could order the Real Madrid fans to stay and stand and applaud. And that memory of sort of a gentlemanly way between two great clubs, who, where the rivalry has been a little bit pungent over the decades. There wasn't a lot of love lost after the Paris final, for example, that ended 1-0. But I thought Emilio Butragueño, that wonderful ex-striker for Spain and Real Madrid, who's now the vice president, said, true behemoths of Europe show their greatness with the gestures that each of us have given to each other over this time. And I really, really appreciated that. I know it's more, for this show, it's more about the sports, more about the personalities and the gossip and the goals and the rows. But I thought that was a genuinely beautiful Champions League moment. Really enjoyed it.
In fairness, people have been in touch this morning asking us to ask you about it, because you could hear it coming through the TV as well. I think you're right, though, that game recognised game, essentially, and this is, it would have been another great final if we'd made it there.
I go against that. Partisan behaviour is good. We love a bit of rivalry in football. I think there's a bit of a...
There's no more partisan crowd than the Bernabeu, where they're getting the white hankies against their own team.
I feel like it's quite easy for Real to play that song when they've won.
Okay.
And there's a bit of a hashtag classy gesture about the whole thing.
Shane, Madrid. Never Real. Madrid.
A la Madrid.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Well, you
sorry. Here I am apologising again, Graham.
I couldn't possibly... Well, let's say we bumped into each other. Nah, look, listen. You can make a little flair out of it if you want, but Madrid are extremely interested in their own well-being, which is a euphemism, and as such, don't think they've gone soft. I don't think it was soppy. I think the thing that's important is in Spanish football, when you co-commentate, just about every single week, there's a minute's silence. Minute silences are slightly more rare, for example, in the Premier League. You would both be, apart from the league in Ireland, you'd be more interested in the Premier League than just about anywhere else, I guess. And there aren't so many minute silences. In Spain, when an old socio dies or any ex-player dies, there's a minute's silence, and the image is up on the big screen before every game. Now, when you're working in co-commentary in La Liga television, it's a perpetual thing, and there is just a slightly different feel in Spain for remembering your past at all costs. I'm not saying that in any way the Premier League is out of touch, and it's cultural. It's probably more cultural than pure football. But if you accept my premise there that happens so much at every stadium, almost every weekend, then you have to imagine. I was going to pick a figure, Ratatouille, I don't know, but when somebody of massive importance to you were to go, like Amancio to Real Madrid, and you go to a club where you could have been treated in either an indifferent or hostile way, and yet you watch them, involving Kenny Dalglish, you watch them treat you with brimming respect. The idea about repaying the gesture, I like a lot. I genuinely like it.
There will be no gesture politics ahead of the Clásico this weekend in terms of making friends. In fact, it seems like it's going to be the exact opposite. There's a massive scandal brewing around Barcelona, and Real Madrid, it seems, are having a little bit of schadenfreude, issuing statements going, well, not that we're enjoying this, but we're definitely enjoying this.
Well, no, there hasn't been enough Schaden or Freude for most people until very recently, because Florentino and Joan Laporta had a pretty common agenda in that they keep stoking away this Super League nonsense, I hope. And therefore, every other club in the Premier League, apart from Real, had issued communiques saying, this is potentially a scandal. We want the truth. It's time to investigate. Let's lift up all the carpets and show where the villains are. And if proven guilty, we need ultimate sanctions. And Madrid hadn't. And therefore, it was only once the criminal prosecution had been weighed up and it had been deemed that there was sufficient evidence to proceed that Florentino Perez gave the thumbs up to Real Madrid, joining the clamour for serious explanations. The two sides of the case are that the tax office in Spain suddenly discovered payments from Barcelona to an ex-referee who had a position in the refereeing hierarchy for the federation, but not an executive role, and therefore Barcelona are saying, we paid these sums for advice and counsel and la la la, and many clubs in La Liga have employed ex-referees to guide them about sometimes as simple as how are the laws being interpreted this year, or equally trying to make sure referees, when they come to the stadium, are greeted by an ex-colleague and you look for a favourable reaction, all that kind of stuff. But it's not uncommon. And Madrid have done that themselves, hired an ex-referee. Ex being the absolutely crucial word. Barcelona were paying these sums for whatever reason to a man who was still involved in the way that the refereeing was run in Spain. And as such, the worst that they can be accused of, and in Spanish law, and proving that any kind of corruption or bribery has taken place, is not as important as proving that there was any attempt whatsoever. And therefore, the bar of evidence is lower than you might expect. And as such, if at the moment it seems very difficult for Barcelona as an institution, because it's not the current Barcelona setup, but over the last, say, 20 years, to escape extremely serious punishments once this is proven. But the bar for proof seems lower than you might expect. It's a very damning situation. And you're right, the timing is quite good comedy in that Madrid have joined the clamour formally immediately before a Clásico. Whether that actually affects the atmosphere of a Clásico, where there'll be very few Real Madrid fans, where if Xavi's team wins, and this is Xavi's fifth Clásico as Barcelona manager, yet his first at the Camp Nou, which is the bizarre modern way of the world. But if Barcelona were to win, they'd be 12 points clear with 12 games left. And therefore, I'm not actually sure that the current situation in Madrid saying, yeah, we want explanations about this refereeing scandal too, it makes the atmosphere any more brittle than it would have been already.
Graham, even if you look at Barcelona's financial situation, I'm sure at the start of the year when they were setting out all their budgets, they were looking at getting to a Champions League quarter-final, maybe semi-final, and then, of course, maybe getting to a Europa League final when that plan went out the window. That's not going to happen. There's a lot of shortfall in revenue there. And looking at people like Gavi, maybe in that squad, whose contract issue is up in the air, like, is Gavi a potential option for a Man City or a Liverpool at some stage this summer if the finances don't work out for Barca?
I think you're being realistic there. The player undoubtedly wants to stay. That's been made clear by his brief statements and his agent's words. And Barcelona have continuously said, we're striving to get the situation. The situation, really briefly, is that he was so good that he'd been promoted to a first team salary, and his jersey number was changed, re-registered with La Liga. And that took a court battle to achieve, because La Liga said your financial fair play is not sufficiently up to scratch, and therefore he's going to have to stay on a junior salary. He's going to have to stay on a not reserve team, but a junior salary. And clearly that's a big blow to a player, any player that is giving their all the time. And Gavi was extraordinary at the weekend at St Mamans against Athletic, trying to dive in and tackle people with his head. He's just a little typhoon, a phenomenal footballer. And therefore, he's, in theory, I don't know whether Barcelona are complying or not, but in theory, he's been put back on the junior wages, which could be in terms of, there could be millions of a difference between what he's supposed to be paying now and what he's been paid 10 days ago. So, and it also means that for as long as La Liga have their way on this, and Barcelona are appealing it in legal terms, then he's out of contract. He wasn't out of contract 10 days ago, potentially at the end of the season. He will be now. Whether he would leave in disgust, Shane, I don't know. I'm due to interview him next week. I don't know the fella well enough to say to you, yeah, he's had enough. He's up to his nose. Thank you. But every serious big club around Europe will be throwing everything that they've got at trying to persuade him to leave, because he is that good. He's going to be that important, and his style of football would absolutely fit anywhere. His temperament is off the scale. His will to win is off the scale, and therefore he's got some John Giles in him. That's right. He's got some classic John Giles in him, and therefore, can I give you, lads, higher praise than that?
No, you absolutely can't. I hope Unai Emery is already on the phone to him. Graham, great stuff. Who's going to win? Is Xavi going to do it? Is he going to win his first home Classico?
Oh, thanks, Ger. Just like that, man. You want a one sentence answer. I think, okay. Vinicius and Araujo have been paired. Xavi has moved Araujo to right back in 4 of his Clásicos so far. And every time Barcelona have won, and they've won on a 9-1 aggregate. The only time Araujo was missing, Real Madrid win. Real Madrid have to come up with a way to unshackle Vinicius when Araujo is moved from centre back to right back to mark him. If Araujo is successful, Barcelona win. If Vinicius and Ancelotti come up with a scheme to liberate Vinicius from the Uruguayan, Barcelona haven't won a home Clásico, a Camp Nou Clásico for 4.5 years. There's the battle. Whichever of those two players is dominant, their side will win.
Tune into La Liga TV for more. Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million. So, Graham Hunter there, give us some thoughts on that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the Clásico always has a bit of juice to it, but this weekend, particularly with all that's happening off the pitch, it's just fascinating. Everything in La Liga is fascinating as well. We'll get Graham on this again, but he's written a great piece this week on Valencia and Sevilla and how they're in bother in La Liga towards the bottom half as well. Valencia particularly are in trouble. Potential trouble, and Sevilla, they're only a couple of bad weekends away from joining them, but like the impact that might have on the league, and they're competing with the Premier League, of course, for sponsorship and commercial revenue as well, so that would be a bit of a disaster to lose a couple of giants.
Sevilla 2-0 up on Fenerbahce in the round of 16 in the Europa League. Obviously Manchester United home and hosed against Real Betis, and Arsenal and Sporting, that was 2-2 in the first leg, so it'll be very interesting to see what team Arsenal pick tonight and how many eggs they're putting in this basket, the balance between go and balls out for this tournament, or trying to rest and maintain your resources for the course of the rest of the season. We'll see. Then again, maybe Gabriel Jesus comes straight back into the side to get some game time, and they win that and they take care of business. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll obviously talk about it more over the next few days. If you want to get in touch, it is easy to do so. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream, youtube.com/offtheball. You need to be subscribed to our YouTube channel to be allowed to comment on it, and you can also tweet us at OffTheBallAM is the Twitter handle for the show specifically. We're going to go to Cheltenham and JD next, but during the ad break you're going to hear a clip from the latest Koi Gig pod where Kathleen and Karen Duggan spoke about the class of Chelsea's Sam Kerr. The Koi Gig pod on Off The Ball is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
OTB AM,
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off The Ball.
And a brilliant finish from Mark Nodegaard. 1 week after their cannons demolished the cottage, the Gunners take aim at the Palace.
25 yards out, he drilled it in, and for all Arsenal's dominance, Palace won, Arsenal won.
Arsenal welcome Crystal Palace to the Emirates Stadium, and you can hear live and exclusive commentary on Off The Ball.
The willingness to go there again and be really dominant. It was really impressive too.
With the Manchester club's in-cup action, Mikel Arteta's Premier League leaders can go 8 points clear with 10 to play. The match kicks off at 2 o'clock this Sunday. Join me, Stephen Doyle, for all the build-up on Off The Ball from 1.
Arsenal have got a second goal. Sensational finish.
I'm grimacing because it was such an opportunity for United. It's probably the best I've seen them play against Chelsea. Possession-wise, I thought they were good. I thought they were better in the middle of the park, but they didn't have the cutting edge, and they don't have Sam Kerr. So that's like, in terms of shots, I think they were pretty even, but possession, it was mostly Man United. But it just goes to show that how efficient Chelsea are when they do get the chances. Just disappointing day for Man United, and I think they can feel a little bit aggrieved. I don't know what your take on it was in terms of the two penalties.
Oh.
For me, they were both penalties. So I think Mark Skinner probably, I could see some of his live reactions, and they were really, really entertaining. By the end, some of them he was just laughing at, because he was just like,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh no, I thought they were absolutely penalties. And also, I think he was very right in his comments after the game, and it's something that we keep getting from managers. You know, Emma Hayes has talked about it, Jonas Eidevall this season as well, that like, he's not necessarily calling out the referee. He's like, we need to have better training in place for referees so stuff like this doesn't happen.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, it's 8:30. You're watching OTB AM this Thursday morning. It is time for JD at Cheltenham.
And they're all.
Mark your card on Off the Ball.
With Boyle Sports. Make this Cheltenham epic. 18 plus. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie.
John Duggan, good morning to you. How are you? Nice hat.
Great, Ger and Shane. Good morning to yourselves.
How was yesterday?
Yeah, good fun. Met Robbie.
Spurs. I'd say you were drooling as a Spurs fan, John.
I met Robbie many times, so it's just funny. I heard Robbie Keane's presenting the trophy of the winners' enclosure. I said, what? And then I said, okay, we got to do a doorstep here. And the thing about a doorstep, which I was far too shy to do in my younger years, is that you have to get in a situation where it's, give me the interview, but also not do that, because then you'll annoy them. But you have to get, you have to just kind of, it's like a sheepdog trot or something. You just have to please give me, and then they agree, and then you have to stop them moving around, and then so you have to be polite, obviously, which I am a polite person, but you also have to be forthright, because you can't fail. If Robbie Keane had walked past me, I would have failed. So we didn't fail.
You're a bit like Martin Brundle in the pit lane.
Yes, I haven't seen the Conor Moore sketch. Apparently, he's very good. But and that's maybe one of my aspirations. So.
Do you have anyone else lined up, John? I'm sure there's famous faces walking around.
It's like, to be honest, like, obviously the priority is to get the horse racing people here, but Harry Redknapp's got a horse today, so I might see if I can bump into him.
We did feel a little bit unusual. So it was Camilla Parker Bowles, Robbie Keane, Katie Walsh, and a few others handing over the trophy.
What a melting pot! I didn't see the Queen Consort, I have to say, but you do get a melting pot of everybody here at Cheltenham.
Yeah,
that's the great thing about it.
To the racing yesterday.
Yes.
Willie Mullins and Paul Townend, they know what they're doing. They are very good. They have some good horses.
They do, and they have now 92 winners for Willie and 26 for Paul at the Cheltenham Festival. It's just silly, really. It's almost, you kind of take it for granted because it's so excellent and it's so professional and it's so consistent. And Energyman won the champion chase by 10 lengths. Paul Townend came off the horse after the race, said it was easy. It's so good it almost becomes a little bit boring when you see the story later in the day, you know.
Willie Mullins at Cheltenham is like Erling Haaland in the Champions League. It's a bit of a piss take. Like, every win you're just like, again. But because he's Irish, we're celebrating and loving it.
Well, for a long time, Willie Mullins would have only had a handful of winners at Cheltenham. Like, his first Cheltenham winner was 28 years ago in Tourist Attraction 1995. So it took him a long time to get up to the position where he's like having the arsenal he has now. And he's already had 4 winners. He had 10 last year, and it's 10-4 at halfway to the Irish.
Let's hear from Willie Mullins. You were chatting to him yesterday. Let's have a listen to him.
Yeah, it hasn't been our luckiest race over the years, but we broke through last year. Now we have 2, so much happier.
Talk to us about the race and how you saw it.
Well, I didn't see what way it was going to happen. Paul came out and told me he was going to jump off up there. He wanted to be near the pace, which he was. And he thought that actually there wouldn't be a lot of depth in the race that everyone was going to just. Everyone wanted to be up there, and he thought, well, he was on the best horse, he wanted to be there and just keep jumping, have a clear look at all these fences, which he did. He jumped spectacularly, loved the ground, all the rain that came was just fantastic for him. So, you know, things couldn't have gone better.
You didn't feel like last time was his true running, maybe?
I knew last time wasn't his true running, you know, it's not him.
And the rest of the week's gone really well. Gardner Neal, El Fabiolo, and a lot to look forward to as well.
Yes, we've Grand Annual Chase now and then the bumper, and we've a lot of nice chances later on in the week, but it's a tough place to win. You know, we've had plenty of good chances that got beaten here, so that's the way it is. We've been going, we're happy.
How you feeling about Galopin des Champs on Friday?
Everything is going well, and we're very happy at how the preparation's gone, and this rain I think is no harm.
No issue with the trip and the jumping, and you're confident?
Yeah, he won a 3 mile hurdle as a novice. I think he'll stay the trip. We're very, very happy.
All right, yeah, so that is as happy as Willie Mullins gets. That is him being excessively happy.
It's a pressurised week, and there's a touch of me which make sure you don't ask a silly question here because you might get a one-word answer. But Willie's a gentleman, and when he's more relaxed, I went down to the yard there about 6 months ago, or 9 months ago, about last July. And he's great when he's not in a pressure situation where, because it just happens so quickly. It's every half an hour there's another race, and by the time it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do a presentation, and by that time the horses are going all around the parade ring, and you got to talk to the new connections.
It's funny he's talking about Galopin des Champs there. A lot of Cheltenham punters will have nightmares thinking about Galopin des Champs last year in the novices chase,
yes,
falling at the last. But Willie very confident about his chances in the Gold Cup on Friday.
Well, it's Patrick's Day, and yeah, look, he's a really, really talented animal. He's a really good jumper. Willie's very confident that he'll get the 3.25 miles because he won over 3 miles as a hurdle horse at Punchestown. He's won at the festival before. He won the John Durkin Chase before Christmas, and he won the Irish Gold Cup there recently. So he's the most talented horse in the race. It doesn't mean you win the Gold Cup because he is can be a little bit exuberant. But I think what is, if you're a fan of his, you'd be pleased to see that Paul Townend has got him more relaxed this season. I think he's got a big chance.
To briefly touch on Energumene,
yes,
however the pronunciation is, it's interesting you brought up the word pressure in the aftermath of that, because here is a horse where the expectation is that if everything goes well, but I thought it was really interesting. He was like, yeah, Paul Townend told me what we were going to do. You know, their relationship is so symbiotic, so deeply embedded. The trust is at such a high level because you're dealing with a world-class practitioner, that when Paul Townend says this is the plan.
Yeah, that's trust. You trust in your employee and your jockey. There's a partnership or element around it. Now, William Mullins isn't shy of. I remember reading about him telling Ruby Walsh, that wasn't your finest hour, was it? But he has the trust of the jockey to make the mistake. So he hammered Paul Townend publicly for Friday-est Thursday Vega there at Leopardstown. Paul went off way too quick, but he gets it right 99% of the time. So there's an honesty there, but there's also a trust in the person to get the job done. And I think there's got to be an acceptance in this crazy game where the horse is going 30 miles an hour. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of obstacles to be jumped. You're dealing with an animal that has their own mind. That if you can get it right 8-9 times out of 10, then that's okay. If you're only getting it right 5 times out of 10, maybe that becomes an issue.
I have a couple of board games at home, John, that says fun for ages 18 to 85, and Cheltenham turns out is the exact same. Yeah, John Gleeson. Yesterday, Leaving Cert student, I was listening to your chat with him as well. Fascinating, like his first ever ride on a Dream to Share, and he wins. And then John Kiley, the owner, 85 from Dungarvan. It's quite a story.
Yeah, training. And
yeah.
I know, Shane, you're probably on the moon when you were 18 because you're a very progressive person in terms of your, getting all these brilliant interviews with all these Apollo astronauts and everything. You do a very progressive time in your life when you were a teenager. For myself, I was an utter square who did nothing until I got into the first day of college, and then my life started. I don't know about Ger. I don't want to speak for Ger there, but
he was in Trinity. Yeah, he was prepping for trainers.
I wouldn't have it because it's my birthday.
But I know you're a spaceman, Shane. Yeah. And look, what a story this is. I met Brian Gleeson. We all know Brian Gleeson from the TV. He's really popular, really a Boolean kind of character doing the betting on RTE, TV, and ITV. So he's John's dad. They bred the horse at home. They won at Leopardstown, and then JB McManus bought the horse A Dream to Share. What an apt name. I met Brian yesterday morning, and I went up to said, look, the best of luck, Brian. And he goes, sure, look. He was I don't think he wanted to believe that it actually could happen. He was trying to play down the chances of the ground. It was too soft and this. And I just said, look, we just agree that, look, hope that the young kid enjoys it and everything comes back with a great experience. But for him to actually win it, and win it with such a brilliant ride that he tracked Patrick Mullins in the slipstream and that he took the inside track and then he won the bumper. It is a fairy tale story. Like doing your leave in the summer, first ride at Cheltenham, you can't make it up, really. You can't make it up.
No, it's like, I can only imagine what the rest of, how do you go back to
the school on Monday?
Like English paper 1 or my accountancy exam. I'm like, the matching principle in accounting means that. I'm like, no, I just want to tell them. It's pretty impressive.
He's the Shane O'Donnell of horse racing.
There you go. So today, what are we looking at?
We're looking at 7 races, another very strong Irish hand. 10-4 is the tally at the moment. I think it's an embarrassment, to be honest, at this stage for the home contingent. They need to look at something. They need to look, because this is like a trend now that's 7-8 years in the making. They need to look at something in terms of investment in the sport, investment in owners, investment in prize money, investment in more competitive races here. The Stairs Hurdle is the feature of half 3. So you have Flooring Porter, you know, the lads in the hurling pod, James Scahill, and that big syndicate out west. They've won the race 2 years in a row. A carpet chop in a pub. A great story, Gavin Cromwell. The horse hasn't been in the best form this season, Flooring Porter, but he goes there with a chance, obviously, of winning a hat-trick. Classical Dream, trained by Willie Mullins, ridden by Paul Tennant. This horse has got a squeak, was second by Tiapu in the Hatton's Grace Hurdle, and they finished ahead of Honeysuckle. Classical Dream needs to be fresh, as a quirky type, but hasn't run since then, so he's got a chance. Tiapu, as I said, is the favourite. Gordon Elliott will train this one. Davy Russell will ride out of retirement, as we know. The horse will love the ground. Soft ground here. It's been raining for the back end of yesterday, and probably going to rain again today. 3-mile trip, soft ground. There's a horse called Gold Tweet from France that I like. Joseph O'Brien's got a home by the Lee. So it's a very competitive race, the Stairs Hurdle. The other one that we're looking at is the Ryanair Chase at 250, the race before that. Shishkin beat an Urgeman last season. Has been in and out of form, but did win on his last start at Ascot. Goes up in trip now to 2.5 miles at Cheltenham. And Shishkin has the likes of Blue Lord and Janadil to face. So they're the couple of the big races. A lot of handicap races, a lot of big fields, and always a difficult day, I find, Thursday, to work out the puzzle.
Okay, and on that note, what are your charity bets for today?
Okay, let's go through them. Thank you to Ball Sports for putting up the cash. We're up 7% after 2 days. A winner, a second and a third yesterday, but a lot of duds as well. But we're just ahead, and hopefully by tomorrow evening we will be ahead as well. So what I'm going to do is go for Blue Lord each way in the 250. He's my nap of the day, 25 each way at 11-2. I think Blue Lord is rock solid. I think Shishkin has got sometimes questions to answer. And I think Blue Lord's a good jumper. I think the step up and trip will help him. He won really well at Leopardstown at Christmas. I think he's a very solid prospect of getting into the frame, Blue Lord. Kind of a conservative nap bet, but 25 each way, Blue Lord 11-2. Maxim is in the 210 for Gordon Elliott. This horse bolted in, I was going to say something more rude, at Christmas at Leopardstown and like soft ground, I think will help him. 15 each way on him at 5-1 in the Pertowns handicap hurdle over 3 miles. Gold Tweet, the French raider, I'm going to give it to him a chance at 10-1 in the Stairs Hurdle. 15 each way, won over the course and distance last time on the conditions. And I think if he improves, he can maybe trouble the Irish horses. I think he could be the fly in the ointment, Gold Tweet. Midnight River, Dan Skelton, Harry Skelton had a winner yesterday. They fancy this horse. He's 15-2 Midnight River in the late festival place, 2.5 mile chase. That's a 4:10. Jessica Harrington sends over Jatara, related to a former champion hurdle winner, Jetski, in a Mare's Novice Hurdle. She's 22-1, 15 each way on her. That's in the 450. And 5:30, obviously you describe yourself, Ger Shane, as Mr. Incredible. 11-2, 15 each way. When I did that Willie Mullins stable tour back in July, Patrick Mullins told me he'd never won the Kimure amateur chase at the festival. He's won some of the other amateur races, like the Bumper. He's won the amateur novices chase, but he's never won the Kimure chase. So it's a real big family ambition for the Mullins family to win this race. They've got a live contender in Mr. Incredible, who was second at Warwick last time out. He'll get the trip. And Willie Mullins has been talking about this horse in Grand National terms. So he's 11-2 each way. I think he'll have a definitely good each way chance. So Mr. Incredible, Jatara, Midnight River, Gold Tweet, Maxim, and the each way nap, Blue Lord. We'll put these up on offtheball.com later.
John, good stuff. Happy punting today, and thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Ger Shane, enjoy Patrick's Day.
That was John Duggan live from Cheltenham.
And they're all.
Mark your card on Off the Ball.
With Boyle Sports. Make this Cheltenham epic. 18 plus. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie.
Up next, we're going to be joined by Vinny Perth in the studio. Here is John Duggan asking Robbie Keane yesterday at Cheltenham about Evan Ferguson.
Evan as well. Excited to see Evan. He's done brilliant so far. Excited to see him. I'm sure he'll play a big part in the next couple of years because he's certainly a prospect.
What you like about him?
I think he's got a lot of ability. I was speaking to one of your colleagues here. The only thing I don't like doing is putting pressure on young strikers. I've been there myself, and I overcame it, and I was lucky enough to score a lot of goals. But we've seen over the years, putting pressure on young strikers and comparing them to myself or whoever, John Aldridge, Noel Quinn. I don't like it because they're their own people. It's a different era, and Evan's got his own path, and he's a different striker than me. He's clearly a lot taller than me, but he has something really special about him. And when you're playing at the highest level in the Premier League and playing for a team like Brighton, that is competing against really top teams, and he's at the forefront of it. And also he was injured for a while and he came back and he's playing. So it's all I can do is wish him, as an Irish fan, and wish him the best of luck, and hopefully he can bang some goals in for us.
Yeah, it's Robbie Keane yesterday speaking to John Duggan at Cheltenham. Vinny Perth is with us. Vinny, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you doing?
It's look, Robbie's right. We get carried away. We're just fans, but Robbie knows what it's like to have a little bit of pressure on you as a 17, 18, 19-year-old coming through.
Yeah, the best thing I suppose I can say is because this one's like me and Evan's father are probably best mates, so I've seen him grow up and as a kid in around the house and holidays together, all that stuff. So I'm reluctant. I certainly won't. I know you love playing people up a little bit.
We are so excited.
So I'll be even less than Robbie. But the only thing I can say is, from knowing the kid so well, is that and by the way, I had no impact in any way, shape or form on his career. Barely watched him play football, ironically, even though I'd known him quite well. Is that
you missed out there, Vinny?
Yeah. Yeah, he remind me of that, don't worry. But it's that he is it's duck to water, this stuff, honestly. And I've been lucky enough to be around people who've done quite well. I know Robbie quite well. I know Richard Dunn really well. And he's just very similar to them guys in terms of he's not going to get above him station any way, shape or form anytime soon. So the pressure is one thing, and rightly so. He's been talked about as all these great things, but it doesn't bother him in the slightest, genuinely. Nice
of Roberto De Zerbi to rest him last night and only bring him off the bench for the last 25 minutes of the game, with the big game against France coming up from.
Yeah, well, it was. I expect him to be on the bench. Nothing more than he's been in. He's out. Welbeck came on and done quite well. So listen, if he's dovetailing with Danny Welbeck, that's okay with me. It looks like on paper he's ahead of Welbeck. But we'll see. I don't think at this stage it's any big deal that he comes out of a game here and there.
How does the Ida injury change the potential face of that Irish lineup for the France game?
Yeah, so my gut feeling was we may have went with Ida just because of the experience, and I know the guys in the camp really like what Ida brings to the team in terms of that focal point. But if we don't know what the injury is yet, haven't heard too much about it, so that may change, Shane. And look, as Robbie said, when you're playing week in, week out, as he is now, it's no shock that he's in a team. So therefore, at the level he's playing at, he's probably jumped ahead of a lot of the people like Troy Parrott and other guys. And Stephen's always been, for me, a really, really brave coach. I think this squad that we've put together over the last couple of years is a lot of heavy lifting, but I actually don't. That's why I thought Ida, if fit, would play. I think he's sort of found where he is now, and I don't think we'll see, like Joe Hodge didn't get picked for argument's sake. I don't think we see loads of changes at the moment. I think he's settled on where he's at, so I don't see a big change.
All right, that's what's coming out this afternoon. We'll obviously have a reaction to it on the show tonight with Nathan from 7 o'clock. Let's talk about the situation in the League of Ireland. It's a really interesting table at the moment. Rovers' difficulties is, I would argue, really great for the league, right? If you're a Rovers fan, it's not great for you, but it's actually brilliant that they're not just winning the first 5 games of the season, 15 points on the table, swashbuckling their way through, and we're all like, well, this is going to be a procession, because it sucks the casual viewers in going, all right, so there's going to be a title race this season.
Yeah, I think while I fully expect them to win the league, that hasn't changed. I just think, yes, it's great for the league. It's another story. It's only 5 games in. So I was in Tolka Park the other night. They played Shelbourne. I probably agree with a lot what Stephen Bradley said after the game. I thought they were quite good. They were definitely the better team, but didn't create a whole lot of chances. So that would be my only concern as a coach. Not Conor Kearns in goal for Shelbourne wasn't overly worked, so that would be a big concern. There just seems to be a lack of real goal threats coming from them, and I know they scored 4 against Cork, but that was a strange game. But beyond that, just didn't see that sort of firepower and blowing teams away at the moment. But they're still playing quite well. I've seen them live, I think 3 times, and they've been really. It's not like this is where they're trying to find form, where they're not playing well, where things are going wrong, and there's infighting that you can see. It just seems they're short of a little spark to go on the run.
It's funny, I wanted to ask you, Vinny, but there was a couple of comments from Stephen Bradley after the game. People were asking him about the fact that some of the new signings, he didn't put them in at all at the start against Shelbourne at Talca Park, and he said it was down to a bit of experience, and they've been here and done that. It was a Dublin derby, so I was thinking of the experience and understanding what the game was about, what it needed. That was my thinking. But surely if you're going to sign players, you still have to throw them in. You can't get experience in a Dublin derby without putting them in there.
Yeah, but there's a bit of a difference between, like, Talca Park pitch at the moment is heavy. It's in good enough condition as I've seen it a lot worse, and there's just experience is the key. You look at a team at the top of the league, and albeit there's 2 centre halves playing them, balls from Poland, it's predominantly a League of Ireland team who've started well, because this time of the year training sessions are difficult, pitches are difficult, the grounds are difficult, and that makes complete sense to me in terms of what he done in terms of team selection. Like Richie Towell came in, obviously would have given them running power in midfield, and so I get what he's saying. It makes sense, but I hear your point. But the difference, if that had been a Dublin derby in Tala, I think you may have seen some of those new signs in the team. But no experience, and as I said, away Dublin derby, but it wasn't one of those. It was quite a boring match in many ways. It wasn't one of those Dublin derbies where it's blood and guts and thunder. It was a lot of possession from Rovers and not a lot from Shells. They set in a couple of counter attacks and could have nicked it at 1 or 2 stages, but it was very comfortable for Rovers. Just didn't get the goal.
We expect Rovers to get better. We expect Jack Byrne to grow into the season and Richie Towell to grow into the season, and those creative players that they have to come more to the fore. Is this maybe a conditioning thing where they're periodising to get ready and they're happy enough with where they are?
Well, that's what you'd say as a coach after a bad start, but no, I think they're
you mean you'd make stuff up, Vinny?
Yeah, like that's nonsense. Like, they're fit enough, they're ready. There is obviously at the start of the season you're trying to find your feet, and it's very hard to explain to you. Pre-season in December, January, now we've had it long enough, can be really difficult in terms of this country and weather, and you're predominantly on AstroTurf pitches, and then you go and play on a really difficult pitch in different venues or whatever. So look, no, I think, like, I go back to Graham Burke's first half performance against Derry City was sensational. Like, so they've players that are near there. Ferrugia looks like he's going to kick on this year. He's someone that really is exciting in the league. I think Jack Byrne has just been average by Jack Byrne standards. So when a couple of these things come together, Johnny Kenny's finding his feet again back in the league. They've played Gaffney, Kenny, who's going to start. So I think they're near there. I think they're it's not doom and gloom, but at the same time, I said a couple of weeks ago, the wheels can come off very quickly. It's a huge game for them this week, a huge game, because if they didn't win then, that's 6 games is sort of a...
It's a pattern.
It's definitely, you can sort of find trends after 6 games, not 1 or 2.
So they've got Pats at home. You had very high praise for the job that Duffer did last season, and you've had another opportunity there to see them most recently. Are they lining up 3-4-3? It says in my I wasn't at the game.
No, it's to be fair, without the ball, it was everyone behind the ball, and right. It was a really low block, and it was sort of letting Rovers have it. And tactically very good. There's no spaces with him. Gavin Malloy, young player, midfielder, playing right side centre half, a back 3, right. Done really, really well. He was outstanding. So. But it is definitely backs to the wall. There's very little creativity to it. The challenge now for Duffer and Joey O'Brien, and they've spoken about it, is to get these players now to be better up the pitch. So Shelbourne aren't conceding a lot of goals, but they're not scoring goals, and they're not. And in the world of entertainment, you've got to create something. So while the fans will accept the Rovers' performance because it's Shamrock Rovers and you get a point, I think they'll want to see a little bit more from them at home, in particular in terms of as an attacking side.
How long does that take? What's realistic in terms of expectations for supporters?
Well, to come away from Duffer for a second, I said it before here. If I took over a club tomorrow and you're conceding goals, well, it's easy as a coach. You often hear coaches, and whether it's in England, anywhere, saying, "Oh, we're conceding goals and we've got to fix that," because that's the easiest training session to do. Defensive session, we don't break us down. The hardest session in football to do is creativity. That's why Pep is the best. When he was at Bayern, he had Lamb playing as a centre midfielder, or Cancelo, or the way Klopp does his stuff. That's how the elite managers take teams to a next level. Their coaching sessions are about, obviously they get the basics right, but it's about coming up with different ways of winning, and that's the hard part for any team. How long does it take? It depends on your players, and I would say to you, this Shelbourne team, I really like them. I like what they're doing. I just use Gavin Malloy as one example. I think young kid playing men's football, doing really, really well, but they're probably short of one or two players that take them to the next level. And Sean Boyd's a big loss for them, but they're probably short of one or two of the best players in the league to help them go to the next stage.
Okay, if we think that there's a pattern emerging, or might be, after 6 games from Rovers, there's definitely a pattern emerging from Bohemians where they're sticking in games, they're hard to beat, they're scoring goals. It's a very heady combination.
Yeah, and I'll use the term, they're a League of Ireland team. Okay, so what I mean by that is Keith Buckley came back, was away for a year. Keith Buckley's gone back into the midfield and being excellent. Keith Buckley was out the other day with a niggle, so they bring in Adam MacDonald, who has huge running power, played for Sligo last year. He went into the 10, probably not his best position, but again, it was away in a Dublin derby, away to Pats, and they were very, very controlled in what they've done. Won comfortably in the end. There wasn't a lot in the game, to be fair to Pats, but it was about the performances. Was very much a League of Ireland performance, and we spoke here a couple of weeks ago about Johnny Afolabi needing a goal, and he got a great goal early in that game, and that filled him with confidence. And they've hit the ground running because they had Declan appointed early last year. They signed players last year. They didn't bring a host of loan players in, what other clubs done, and they've hit the ground running. I think they're probably short to sustain that over the season, but sometimes watch this, Shane. Sometimes momentum carries you all the way.
He's loving that. He's loving
something.
That.
But no, look, I think Bohs have done their business right, and they're a League of Ireland team for now. And this, going back to the weather and all of that stuff, they're suited where they're at. But there's a bit of quality to them as well too.
The Louth derby tonight. A fixture you've experienced plenty of times yourself, Vinny. But how does it compare to the Dublin derbies? Like, is it the same kind of hatred back and forth there? Stephen O'Donnell has a top. They've actually both started reasonably well this season. Yeah, no,
Kevin Doherty's done a really good job, because Drogheda people probably thought it'd be them and UCD battling out at the bottom, and they've got a good start to themselves. That'll be there's a lot of hatred there, and it can be. I know when I experienced it, Drogheda weren't that good at the time, so we probably had a handy against them. We've won some of the games comfortably, but there was also times where you go up to United Park and they put it up to you, and a little bit of nastiness would creep in. So it has the same Dublin derby feel to it when you go to a Dublin derby. The fans they don't like each other in any way, shape or form, and that'll be a proper intensity about that game tonight. I think being a Thursday night is actually interesting, because I do often say trying different things, but the game will be more or less a sellout anyway, but it'll be a really good atmosphere in it, and a lot of choice words coming from the stands aimed at each other, so it'll be really good, really interesting game.
Are Derry about where we would expect them to be? Like, obviously there's a big transitional period happening where everything is kind of moving on to hopefully a long-term plan and an even keel, and when that happens, sometimes we can have expectations that are slightly out of whack. They're unbeaten after 5 games, they're second in the table, they're going to be pretty happy with how life has gone. They've come to Rovers and they've beaten them.
I suppose it's funny, knowing Rory Higgins, he'd be a bit disappointed he haven't picked up more points. They were very dominant against Dundalk on Friday. 65% of the ball. Dundalk set in, went up and looked for a point and got it. So probably their biggest fear for me has been, or the biggest area of improvement is around the back forward. You've got real talent in the forward area. You've got some exceptional players. We've seen that a couple of weeks ago, the way they cut open Shamrock Rovers. But Cameron Dummigan is missing at the moment. He's a right back, probably the best player in the league last year outside of Gaffney. McJanet, their captain, is injured, and Mark Connolly got what looked like, a proper hamstring where he's sprinting, and it's one of them we pulled up. They don't have the strength and depth around the back four to carry that, so that's a big challenge for them. I felt the area of improvement was around their back four, and then to be out without three of them is going to really test them. So it's a big test for Derry over the next couple of weeks in terms of how many of them players they can get back. Obviously the international window will help them, but that's going to be a challenge for them, for me. But have a great start to the season, playing really well, really comfortable. McElhenney looks like he's where he is. They've managed him quite well. I always say he's probably the best player in the league alongside Jack Bourne for talent reasons, and they've Michael Duffy to come back into the team. So they're really in a good place, and they can take a little bit of confidence from Rovers struggling, because there's not a lot of pressure on them. They're not chasing Rovers, winning 5 out of 5, and they're already a couple of points behind. They're in a good position.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for them to try and build up a bit of a lead and just kind of get that cushion. All the talk has been that they are in a title race, so there is pressure at some level, and you would hope their expectation is that they're going to be able to sustain that over the course of the season.
Well, that's why I want this Rovers team to be tested. I think they're a great team, but to be a great team, I think you need to be tested. So what I mean by that is, take this Friday, they play Pats, and Derry are winning 2-0, right? They haven't really had this experience where if it's 0-0 in Tala between them and Pats after 55, 60 minutes, you go and take a risk.
Yeah.
And you go
because
and...
it matters, because it hasn't mattered.
Yeah.
It hasn't mattered.
It hasn't mattered as in, they've always had a bit of a cushion, you would say, once the season got going. And that's the different mentality, and people don't understand that. And someone asked me during the week, what does it take to win a league? And not that I'm an expert in any way, shape or form, but being involved in a couple of league winning teams, I said, it's very difficult to answer that other than to say, probably a bit of calmness, if you can have a bit of calmness. And that's probably the best word I can use for, if Derry continue to win, then as it currently stands, I think what Rovers would have to be, Derry would have to lose 3 games and Rovers have to win 3 more now. Now, it's very early for that, but the longer that stays there, then you go chasing a game, you take a chance, you get a corner in the 85th minute and you send an extra player in, and all of a sudden you're done a counter-attack. And that's what I want to see this Rovers team tested. Do I think they'll pass the test? Yeah, I think they're a great team, but let's test them.
Well, and the other side to that is that the opposition suddenly aren't feeling like they're beaten in every game going out against Rovers. That there's no kind of last 10 minutes where Rovers are going to do us here because they're Rovers, and sure, that'll be grand, we can accept that.
Yeah, you always get that where a point against Shamrock Rovers is a good result, and most teams will think that. You'll probably think that about Derry as well. I think the difference in our league now at the moment is, no matter who you are, you think you can pick up points against everyone else. As in, I think you think 3 points are on the table against everybody else, and that's where there's a huge amount of teams now are very similar standard, and that's where you're seeing results up and down.
Who's the pick of that tier of teams just below Derry and Shamrock Rovers? And I suppose you've got Bows, Dundalk, Sligo Rovers maybe would consider themselves amongst that as well, but who's the pick of them?
Yeah, no, the pick of them at the moment was Bows. I thought Pats would be. They've had a difficult start to the season, and we'll see how that one plays out, but I like to look at what Dundalk have done. A lot of the loan signings look like they're a really high standard, but the problem is they only signed 3 or 4 of them over the last 2 weeks. If they can get a settled team very quickly, Daniel Kelly looks like he's hurt his hamstring again. That's a huge blow to them. Pahoban is like, because it's Dundalk and because it's outside of Dublin, genuinely don't get the feeling how big of a player that person is. He's outstanding for them. He's probably fitter now than he has been in a couple of years because he's had a run of games. Over 100 times he scored for Dundalk. I think he's chasing down his 6 or 7 goals from the all-time goal scorer. And I often hear you talk about GAA players getting
the records,
records and the standards, or if they walk into a ground, the amount of kids that run around. You want to see like we done a soccer camp for underage kids in Dundalk a couple of years ago, and the players came down. I brought them down to meet the kids, sign different things. But when Hoban walked in, it was your Clifford moment,
right?
And I'll find it. I'll send it to you. I'll find it on one of the socials or whatever, YouTube. But I think he can, if they get him fit and get players around him or stay fit, they could be the pick of the bunch, right. And that go and push someone on.
Well, all of a sudden, while Rovers are having their little moments, everybody else must be thinking, let's go on, let's just see what happens.
Pick up points, yeah.
Yeah, and you've got to remember, so there's 10 team league, 4 teams get into Europe, 3 and 1 in the cup, but generally the top 3 teams will win a cup, so a 40% chance. And then the rewards for Europe are absolutely huge. Yeah. They're huge. Anyone that it's probably, you would say you're nearly guaranteed somewhere around $500,000. Okay, that's $500,000 for literally nothing, for want of a better word, for one game. And win a game or 2, you're heading for £1 million. That's huge investment for a League One club.
Yeah.
So that's the dream. If you were doing an interview, I haven't done many of them, but if you were doing an interview, you talk about Europe. That's my advice to coaches coming through, and how you get a team to Europe, because that's what owners want for obvious reasons.
All right. Any last one? So you don't expect any surprises in the squad name today, really?
No. I would imagine just on the squad, have a little look at maybe Ireland having a McGrath, Knight, Malumbi, Cullen combination as a sort of a box in midfield. That would be the one for me, particularly with Ida missing. Have a look at that. And before we move on, just to give a special mention, the Irish under-17s.
Oh yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And what's really important about it is sometimes I come in here and give out about funding and different things. It's so much home-based. And it's actually not just home-based, as in Pats, Rovers and Bowls have a big element to this. But there's players from Wexford, Cork, Derry as well. And what we're doing at underage level, obviously Colm O'Brien has done a brilliant job as head coach. But what the academies in League of Ireland are doing, despite this big change and all the trouble, they're helping this international team. Some people deserve huge credit. Rovers, Pats, Bowls, as I said, but also there's players coming from outside of it as well. And that's really, really important what we're doing, and to say we're actually able to do this despite of everything else. And I'll just throw this one at you to maybe for years to investigate or to take on. Look at the Irish government giving £500,000 to GAA in New York. I'm not going to say anything other than it's not heartbreaking, but don't forget us, lads. We're still here.
Look, feel free to have that conversation, because it is like I've been to the annual dinner dance in Gaelic Park, and they have access to a load of money, because there's a lot of rich Irish businessmen who've made and who are sending loads of money back and are sponsoring like teams here, but are sponsoring the team out there. New York floats on a pile of Irish money. I'm not being critical of it. Fair play to them. But it is a bit strange that Micheál Martin goes over and goes, here's $500,000 from the Irish Exchequer for an organisation that can actually, it serves a function, but it's self-sustaining and it can generate its own cash.
Yeah, and I think it's important that I say, so because I bring this stuff up probably regularly, it's important to say I know there's a huge amount of work on the FEI in the background, and I hope in time there'll be some sort of announcement in terms of some, so I'm not saying anyone is sitting on their hands, I'm not saying nothing's going on, and it takes time, but when you look at our under-17s competing internationally and having the Brexit to deal with, where these players would have been developed, or 16, 17 year olds on when Brian Kerr done it with the great Noel O'Reilly, a lot of them lads were like Robbie was in Wolves, or Celtic, Richard was in Everton, and all this stuff. This has been done from here, and it's been done through hard work and despite of everything else. So I'm just saying, maybe some people need to say it's brilliant for New York. I'm not begrudging them a penny of that money, but hey, we're doing all right ourselves, and with a little bit more help we might even do a bit better.
All right.
That's as politically as correct as I can put it.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point to raise at the end there. Drop the bomb, mic drop, walk off into the sunset. We'll see what happens, but we'll definitely follow that story up. It's 9:08. That is our weekly League of Ireland slot there. Vinny Perth, thanks very much. Here's what's on the OTB podcast network for you today. Mark your card. That's John Duggan's Tips, the football pod with Tommy, and Wednesday Night Rugby with Jerry Thornley and Andy Dunn. Follow us across our social channels. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. After this short break, Philippe Auclair's You Had to Be There.
Right. I don't think it's in any way staged. It's not a front. He absolutely loves torture. He loves this whole adversity thing, and I've heard coaches give that lip service, and then something happens 15 minutes before kickoff, and they're running around frantic in the changing rooms. That's where you see what they're like, and they don't want the backup guy coming on, and you see mayhem in a changing room. You see plans being ripped out, pages being torn, shouting, screaming. Late, he seems to be very, very like I interviewed Mike Catt the week before the Scotland game at a corporate thing, and for a fella who's won a World Cup, you have Paul O'Connell as a Lions captain, you have Simon Easterby with 70 caps, Easterby, you had Fogarty captain provinces, 10 caps for Ireland, and all the other people involved in that coaching group. And Mike Catt said absolutely genuinely and without exaggeration, he goes, we'd be lost without him. He just said we'd be lost without him. That was how he described Farrell. He goes, he just knits it all together. He knows exactly what to say. He knows how to keep us all in check. He knows how to keep us all motivated. Like, the soft skills, the life experience, the intangibles in being a CEO that he brings to that group it's just phenomenal.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
OTB Rugby.
We know that Matt Canson is a bit loose-lipped and it's great. I think in many cases people take it with a pinch of salt. Gone are the days where newspaper articles were pinned up on walls as motivation. Geez, if you're clutching at straws, if that's what's inspiring you and that's what's getting you up for an international test match.
Subscribe to the Rugby Stream on the OTB Sports app now.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Right, I am delighted to welcome our guest for this week's You Had to Be There. It is none other than the legendary French sports journalist Philippe Auclair. Philippe, good morning to you. How are you?
Not too bad. Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
When we asked you, expected 5 football, but actually it is heavily skewed in favour of cricket.
I'm afraid so. Cricket is my favourite game. I hesitated because, to be honest, the thing is that when you asked me, I had to be there. First of all, I had to choose the occasions on which I was at the ground where it happened. And the second thing, I had to think of individual performances, and which is not my way of looking at things normally. I can think of team performances, for example. I would certainly have put, Arsenal's 2-1 win over Barcelona as one of my 5 moments if it had been for just a sporting occasion. But if I have to take one player out or one singular individual performance out, I think, no, that doesn't quite work. So obviously cricket being a game which is both team sport and individual sport lends itself more, I think, to this kind of thing.
Okay, that's it.
And I think that,
I
think, yes, I think it is quite logical, but there's quite a bit of football though.
There's loads of football. I'm interested in again that it's club football as opposed to international football that you've gone for.
Yeah, for the simple reason that I've attended thousands of club games and perhaps only hundreds of international games. So otherwise, I would have said, okay, Michel Platini, and I could have taken 5 performances by Michel Platini, for example. But I wasn't there when he scored the winning goal in the final of the 1984 European Championship. I wasn't there. So, again, it's the thing of what matters is the imprint it leaves on you, almost physically, as a matter of fact, because you're part of this giant organism, which is a sport audience, and you participate in a way which is completely different from the way that, say, I could think, for example, Yannick Noah winning the French Open, which was a huge moment for all of us. And for me, I was a very keen tennis player at the time. But again, I was not at Roland Garros. Whereas I can promise you, I was at every single of these 5 occurrences.
Okay, well, let's start with a match between Pakistan and England at the Oval. This is the 5th test in 1987. Abdul Qadir is not going to be a name that many of our viewers this morning here in Ireland are watching, but I'm sure that our English viewers are like, oh yeah, we remember this. So can you put a bit of context on this performance for us?
Well, first of all, I passed the cricket test. I'm an England supporter. And strangely enough, the 2 cricket performances I've chosen have both been against England. So which should tell you something about how amazing they were. Abdul Qadir, to those who don't know him, was, because he's unfortunately left us, probably one of the all-time great spin bowlers in cricket. And he was, at the time, a kind of dinosaur. He was the last exponent of a dying art, or what people thought was a dying art, which was leg spin bowling. And I'd fallen in love with cricket as soon as I settled in London and started to go to games watching Middlesex. And this, amazingly enough, was the very first test I went to at the Oval. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I chose wisely, because this was not the time of baseball where, the England team goes at 5 runs and over. It was quite a stodgy affair. Javed Miandad scored 260, I believe, in an innings that seemed to last forever. Mudassar Nazar was there, which is a name that will send chills down the spine of everybody who wants their cricket to be played at a good pace. But anyway, it was a grand occasion. And you have to say that some of the players in both teams, rank amongst, the greatest of their generation. So, for example, Pakistan, the captain was Imran Khan. Javed Miandad was batting. The great Wasim Akram, probably the greatest left-arm swing and fast bowler of all time, was also there. And, England still had players like Mike Gatting was at the time the captain. He had won the Ashes in the winter. David Gower, the great David Gower, was batting. It was 2 very, very strong teams. And it was the flattest of pitches. It's like nothing was happening. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, comes this weird animal. As I said, a dinosaur. I've compared him sometimes to a coelacanth. It's like you think it's a species which has disappeared, and you find in the depth of the ocean a living fossil. And he's not only the exponent of a dying art, but he's one of the greatest exponents of this dying art. And when I fell in love with cricket, I fell in love with the intricacy of it, with the complexity of it, but also with the fact that it was possible to be a fabulous bowler and to send the ball down actually more slowly than I, as a starter, as a beginner, could do it in the nets. I think, how is that possible? You should be smashed to all part of the parks. And obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that. And Qadir was also somebody who had a quasi-mystical approach to his cricket. So he was a very proud Pakistani, and he defended his national team. Sometimes, he was incredibly competitive and incredibly aggressive on the field. But there was also another element to him, was that for him, the art of leg spin, which is really an art form, one of the, greatest art forms in sport, was also about getting in touch with some kind of greater truth. And to do that by constant practice and thinking and evaluation of his own art. And he had developed an arsenal of deliveries that I think very few other leg spinners or slow bowlers have ever developed in the game, including Shane Warne. And I know maybe we are talking to people who are not necessarily that much into cricket, but for example, one of the weapons of a leg spinner is the googly, right? Which is the wrong one, which goes the other way that you're expecting to do. Well, Abdul Qadir didn't have one, he had 3. He had one that he made sure that the batsman could identify, so that the batsman would think afterwards, yeah, okay, that's a googly coming. Except he had the second one, which was a bit more disguised, and he had the third one, which you couldn't read at all. And he did that of 3 paces, walking paces, on an absolute flat pitch on which the England bowlers, the slow bowlers that is, who were at the time Phil Edmonds, the left armour, and John Embury, who never spun a ball in his life, they had taken 0 wickets for something like plenty in the first innings. And then we thought, okay, this is going to a draw, this is going to be so boring. And then this man appears and gives this unbelievable exhibition of the most difficult art form of spin bowling, which is leg spin bowling. And I was mesmerized. I was like the batsman, on the pitch who couldn't understand what was going on. I couldn't understand, but I knew one thing. It was beautiful to watch. And we were in touch with one of the great artists of world sport. And I think of any country, of any era.
I think you've exactly explained what this whole slot is supposed to be about, where you're witnessing something unfold and you believe that it's somebody in the hunt for or discovering a greater truth. 7 wickets for 96 runs. Did Pakistan win the test? I presume they did with those scores. No.
Right. They didn't, because they had taken their time to score their runs, and plenty of them over 700 in the first innings. And despite the fact, Abdul Qadir did take, I think, 3 wickets in the second innings, but England just basically dug in, and they drew with quite comfortably, actually scoring 315 for 4 wickets, and with Mike Gatting scoring a typical Gatting innings, which was both prudent and sometimes brutal, and scoring 150 not out, and England were saved. So that's absolutely extraordinary. That's typical cricket. I've been at cricket games which, honestly, just thinking of them makes my spine tingle. The day when there were 4 innings in a day at Lord's against the West Indies, and I've been very lucky. I've been to loads of great moments of cricket, but this is a game that ended in a draw. And yet it is, I think, the single greatest performance I saw by any cricketer on the pitch.
You've picked a second cricket one as well. We may as well stick with the cricket and move on to the football. Yep. This is against England at the Oval again in 2013. Why did you fall in love with cricket? Because I first of all, because I couldn't understand it. And therefore, since I'm curious by nature, I wanted to know, why are people getting so excited about this weird game? And I had a teacher who was, at the time, I arrived in London because I was, and I still am, a musician. And the person, the A&R, who signed me to an English label, called Mike Allway, and he was a cricket nut. And he kept talking about cricket. And I said, why keep talking about cricket? And he explained, he said, it's chess on grass. Right. And I'm a very keen chess player. I was actually quite a good club player at the time. And I thought, I've got to know more about that. Then I went to see a game. It was at Lord's between Middlesex and Warwickshire. And I was sitting quite next to the pitch. And this is where I realized that, my goodness, this is fast, this is incredibly technical, and this is extremely dangerous. Because I think Wayne Daniel was bowling that day, and he was bowling at 90 miles an hour. I'm thinking, how is this possible? And they looked frightened, some of the batsmen. I thought, there is more to this game. And then I started playing it very quickly. And since I was a decent tennis player, I realized, I could actually time the ball a little bit. And, you get the bug. I started reading about it, discovered that cricket is also one of those games which has inspired some of the greatest sports writing ever. And you put all this together, and the attraction of exoticism as well, because I was unused to sports where the main powers were like India and Pakistan. That's something that is simply not the case anywhere else apart from hockey. So there's all this. It's a fascination, and I caught the bug. I still have it more than ever. And I have to say that there is no day that I look more in the sporting calendar than that the first day that I spent at Lord's for the test match, which I've done religiously for a number of years now.
Philippe, this second pick is Kumar Sangakkara, 134 not out versus England at the Oval. This was 10 years ago, June 2013. I'm curious, when there are opposition performances like Sangakkara or Qadir at the Oval, what's the atmosphere like amongst the English fans? Like, is it respectful? Is it almost awe at what an opposition player is doing, or is it quite the opposite?
Awe is the right word. First of all, obviously, cricket publics and crowds are very different from other crowds, because I think that even though you might have an incredibly strong link with your own team, and I do have an incredibly strong link with the England team, those link is even stronger to the truth of the game, and which is why when you have had the privilege of watching, I don't know, Sunil Gavaskar bat or Mohammad Azharuddin, or you've seen Shane Warne bowl, or, I could go on like this forever. There is, again, a greater truth, and cricket is perhaps better at recognizing it than other games. And therefore, at the beginning, you're really quite annoyed because you want them out. You want them smashed to all parts of the ground. And then you realize, well, no, actually, this is pretty special. And in the case of Kumar Sangakkara, I mean, it was a one-day international as well, which is pretty unusual for me because I go to test matches rather than one-days. One thing is that from the very beginning of that innings, I think everybody around the ground realized, oh my goodness, this is a little bit different. I've seen more spectacular innings with perhaps more memorable shots. I have never seen an innings in which a batsman was so much in control of what he was doing. And it's a point where you don't just applaud the beautiful shots, and there were plenty of those because, Sangakkara was a beautiful and such an elegant player and technically perfect. Even when he was blocking the ball, it was great because this was a master in total control of his art again. And the impression, there was a certain, at times, cricket, there is a certain dignity about some performances. It's like there is almost like a moral authority to an innings. And this was the case. I mean, Sangakkara, I think anybody who follows cricket will agree that he's one of the true greats. And I was lucky to see him perhaps at the very top of his game, where he made it look so simple, where, the arc of the bat was hitting the ball either for a cover drive or an off drive or even a pull, was just perfection. And the crowd responded to that, enthusiastically. He got an ovation for his 100, and that won the game. Finished 134 not out, if I'm not mistaken, and Sri Lanka went through, and it was coming, by the way, on the back of a game in which the England bowlers had been extremely good and had been totally on top of things. This time that was not the case, and. Jimmy Anderson was bowling, Graham Swan was bowling, but Sangakkara was just, was the master at work, judging absolutely every single ball on its merits and finding a solution. He probably faced, 150 balls? I don't have the stats in my head, but every single one of those was perfectly judged, either blocked or let it go or just hit it. Magnificence, elegance, authority, and also humility, because Sangakkara is not one of those players who, will make a lot of what he does. That's his nature. He doesn't need to.
Can I ask you a question about your appreciation for this? You mentioned that you were a musician. I suspect most of the people who've been listening to you speaking to us for the last 20 odd years on Off the Ball didn't realise that you have an alternative exterior life. Does your appreciation for sport and the way you've spoken about it is very specific? Is it different, do you think, because of your background as a musician?
Possibly because of that, and of my background, full stop, because by training, I'm a philosopher and philosophy teacher, philosopher, I won't use that word, philosophy teacher. So I do look at things perhaps a bit differently from some other people who do not have this kind of training. And then there's the music as well. And I think perhaps because of the type of music I do and the type of musician I am, I'm more sensitive to craftsmanship. Not just artistry, but craftsmanship and what the amount of skill that you need to do something well, and the amount of skill you need to have to go beyond the point where people realize you have skill, that you master it to such an extent that it becomes natural. And people say effortless, which is the wrongest term to use in any kind of sport, because this is effortlessness is just the produce of incredibly hard work. And when multiple intellectual calculations and an extraordinary level of communication between the brain and the limbs and the body as a whole takes you somewhere else where you're totally on top of what you do, and which obviously in music is absolutely crucial. If you want to, the greatest virtuosi are not people who give you the impression they're really struggling through Sibelius' Violin Concerto, right? But believe me, they did in the past when they started to learn that. But then you can get to that level, which is what you should aspire to as an artist. And I believe that great sports people are people who precisely give this impression of ease and effortlessness. It's like Usain Bolt. People think, he's cruising to victory. No, he's not cruising to victory. He's been working like mad. He's phenomenally talented, yes, but he's been working like mad to make sure he could be that person who can fly on the asphalt or whatever it's called these days, and be faster than anybody else. And these are the moments when you see a sports person being able to be in communication with his own or their own art is something extra special. And Kumar Sangakkara, that innings was one of those moments.
That's so fascinating, because Ronnie O'Sullivan, I've heard an interview with him recently where he compared playing snooker to being a violinist in an orchestra, where connecting music to shots, and how he sometimes does that in his head, which completely ties into what you're talking about with cricket. It's a fascinating area, I think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not surprised, because he can give the impression of being effortless, can't he? Mm-hmm. And also because I think that also the beauty of his game perhaps has got something to do with it, that because it is so beautiful, you think it's easy. You think, oh, these people are just super talented. Mm-hmm. No, they are super talented, but the way they work, their bodies and their brains work, is a produce of not just gift, but an extraordinary dedication to your own art. And I use the word art, a lot, because the artistic dimension of sport is something that, for me, is absolutely prevalent, and which is why there are some great sportsmen and great teams that really leave me totally cold.
Yeah,
I won't give names, because I don't find it. Because to me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have really any value.
Thierry Henry is on your list, so he obviously does not leave you cold.
Well, that's less of a surprise. Yeah. Well, he's on my list, and again, it could have been a few performances there. The game against Liverpool in the 2003-2004 season, but the one I've chosen is because it was perhaps his masterpiece, which was February 2006. A very young Arsenal team goes to the Bernabeu, is not given a chance. It's in the Champions League, of course. It's not given a chance there. And we have the Thierry Henry masterclass. And again, somebody who seems taller than anybody else on the pitch, stronger than anybody else on the pitch, cleverer than anybody else on the pitch. And everybody around him, certainly in the Arsenal side, is taking their cue from him. And this is not, by the way, a small Real Madrid team. Even if some of the players are past their best, but you've got Duty is there, Zinedine Zidane is there, Robinho is there, Raul is there, Ronaldo, David Beckham, Roberto Carlos, also Jonathan Woodgate. Amazingly enough, he didn't last long. And in fact, across the pitch from them, you've got an Arsenal team which has a back four, which is Eboué, Touré, Sandaros, Flamini. So you don't give them much of a chance, against the Galacticos. But Thierry was just sublime all through the game. And obviously, the moment that sticks out is this goal, which I think everybody's seen, where he picks the ball. I think Cesc Fabregas gives him the ball just past the halfway line. And then suddenly you see all these Real Madrid players falling like nine pins, or not knowing what to do, and he's totally toying with them, and he slots the ball almost nonchalantly in the Thierry Henry fashion, in the typical Thierry Henry finish, which is slightly to the left of the box, angled in the far corner. There's nothing you can do about that. And again, people will say, it comes so easily to Thierry. No. Because I've talked to Thierry about that kind of goal, and he explained to me, you know what, the reason why I find the net is because when I was at Monaco at the time, I think he was working with Rémi Garde at the time. or Claude Puel. He was working with Claude Puel. And he said, we must have done this thousands of times. He would stay over after training and they would exactly rehearse that particular passage of play where he gets the ball on the left wing, goes back inside, and the shot across, and he beats the keeper every single time. And you could see, I mean, even I went absolutely berserk. I was in the press box, which is very, very bad indeed. But we were encouraged by the behavior of our Spanish colleagues. We were just above us at the Bernabeu, and who were cheering everything. And we thought after a while, sod it. We're going to be Spanish about this. And we all jumped up and celebrated like mad this goal, which was just after the beginning of the second half. And the Real Madrid audience, to give them their credit, actually applauded. And after the game, I remember going with my friend Amy Lawrence, probably you know of The Guardian, and a few other gooners. We met in a bar in central Madrid, and we thought, okay, we've just beaten them. What's it going to be like? And in fact, people came to us and shook us by the hand and said, guys, you've got the greatest player on the planet. Or we wish we had him. We wish we had him. Which was very generous and very typical, it has to be said, of Real Madrid fans. And it was not just the goal, but I think there is another moment in that game which shows how much Thierry was in charge of everything. Arsenal were leading 1-0. Real Madrid were trying to have a go, but he got the ball. So it was in the dying minutes of the game. So it was all about, you know the one?
Yeah, he runs past Ramos like he's not there.
Yeah, and he just literally pushes the ball alongside the touchline, and he runs past him. And the guy's just like, what? What does that thing? Then he goes towards the corner flag, and he gets a throw in for Arsenal, and the expression on his face as well is magnificent.
Well, he looks like he's not out of breath whatsoever.
No, it's like, that's easy. Just like the way he celebrated his goals. Because he's not known, apart from the famous goal against Tottenham, as somebody who really explodes when he scores. He's always somebody who tries to, or tried, unfortunately, to keep it within himself and to concentrate on the next goal. And he's never happy with himself, never ever. And even on this occasion, at Santiago Bernabeu, in the ground of a club, which, by the way, had tried to sign him a number of times before, and he had given a demonstration on the pitch of exactly why they were right to chase him, and we were extremely lucky to still have him at the Arsenal. He owned the pitch, which is something which is very rare in a team sport, because you could think that, for example, you would think of some of Lionel Messi's greatest performances, or Michel Platini's greatest performances, or Ronaldo Fenomeno greatest performances, and thinking, well, that was really illuminated the game. There are very few instances where it's almost down to a single player.
Yeah.
That the player, I mean, it's not to say that the other 10 players, actually 14 players, because there were some subs, didn't do their job beautifully, which they did. It was just that he was on a different plane. And it was a Thierry Henry had at the time. People were starting to wonder if his powers were waning a little bit. Oh, no, they weren't.
I'm not surprised Thierry Henry made your list. I have to say, I did have a little bit of a giggle when I saw Clint Dempsey. Clint Dempsey is on your list for Fulham 4, Juventus 1 in 2010.
Yeah, and I have to say that I'm surprised. I surprised myself because Clint Dempsey actually only played 29 minutes of that game as well. And why did I choose that? Because of all the sporting events I've been at, this was the most emotional moment that I've lived, was when Clint Dempsey scored in the 82nd minute of that tie against Juve. I have never experienced anything like it in terms of a communion between the players and the crowd and the reporters and the stewards. We were literally dancing on in Craven Cottage, in the press box, which is that there's not a press box in Craven Cottage. You've got wooden benches and you're sat there. You've got absolutely no room. Your laptop is balanced on your knees. And I remember, I think I jumped in the arms of a steward who was next to me. And so did all the journalists around us, because we were perfectly placed. It's one of those moments when, you're exactly at the right place in the stadium where you can see the arc of the ball. You see absolutely everything. And you could draw a line between where the ball nestles in the net, the shot, and yourself. It's a straight line. So the best angle possible. And the fact that it was a lob makes it even nicer, because you had the times that it's coming, it's in. And it capped an absolutely unforgettable evening. Fulham were not supposed to, they'd done already fantastically well to reach that stage in the competition. They were against Juve. Now, okay, there was a sending off of Cannavaro, blah, blah, but they still had to win 4-1, and they did win 4-1. And Clint Dempsey, bless him, scored that fourth goal. And for that reason, I had to pick him.
Fair enough. We're nearly out of time, but I do want to do some justice to this, because it's N'Golo Kante again in a losing performance. You've picked something out that you think is emblematic of something, and actually there's a supercut on. I searched for this performance. Somebody's put a supercut together of all his touches, and it's amazing. He is amazing in this game.
I've got to watch that again, because it was Leicester was visiting Arsenal. And they lost that game really at the last gasp, 2-1. And actually at the time, people thought, well, maybe that's the moment when Leicester's, rush for the title is coming to an end. And Arsenal are scored an absolutely magnificent goal to win. But I don't think that any of us was prepared for N'Golo Kante, because hardly any of us had seen him before. He'd arrived from French second division. Okay, he'd been playing a few games, and people were talking, saying, have you seen that midfielder? He's a bit special. And to see N'Golo Kante in the flesh for the first time was a revelation. And all of us, what I would call seasoned observers of the game in the press box, were all looking at each other and all saying, you seen that Kante guy? Have you seen that Kante guy? I remember one moment in particular. He intercepted the ball, I think, just outside of his box, of the Leicester box, on the right-hand side. And I thought, that's pretty impressive. I just looked down and typed just like, 27th minute Kante interception. Looked up, thought, where is he? Oh, my goodness, he's there. He's managed, he's found the way to transport himself through space and time without me realizing it. And he was then doing exactly the same thing on the other side of the pitch, like 50 yards ahead. And then I started watching literally just him, and I realized, it's not just the fact that he runs very quickly. It's not just the fact that he's incredibly strong for somebody of such small stature. It's because every single movement that player does on the pitch is the consequence of perfect reading of what is happening around him. This guy has got one of the greatest football brains I've ever seen. He knows how to be in the right place at the right time. Now, Claude Makélélé had it as well, in this kind of... But Claude Makélélé didn't quite have the kind of percussion, the kind of energy, almost kinetic energy that N'Golo Kante could, exude on the pitch. And also, he was a beautiful passer of the ball outside of the boot, inside of the boot. He could pass first time. He knew when to pass the ball back, but he was also looking constantly, can I hit one of my midfielders? Can I hit Jamie Vardy or whoever up front? All the time. And 1-to-1, no problem. He will win them all. But he was ubiquitous. And it was a revelation that, my goodness, here is a very, very special player, which is lovely, by the way. When this happens, you're at a game, you don't know that player, and suddenly that player jumps out, which is exactly, by the way, what I felt when I first saw Gabriel Martinelli in the Europa League for Arsenal later on. I thought, this player is just amazing. But N'Golo Kante, my goodness, what can you say? And then from then on, he became the greatest midfielder on the planet.
Philippe, that was a sensational episode of You Had to Be There. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your memories. Cheers.
No problem at all. My pleasure.
It's so unexpected.
It's one of those you had to be there moments.
You had to be there.
It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life.
You had to be there.
Right, that was sensational. Do look up that video of Conte in that performance. Whoever cut it up, it could have been an agent trying to get him a move to Chelsea. It obviously worked. A league title that year, and as he said, best midfielder on the planet. I do wonder what would have happened if he'd been fully fit over the last couple of years.
100%.
What sliding doors moments it would have been for club and country, but we will never know. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. On tomorrow's show, Paul Galvin and Alan Quinlan. We're going all in on Ireland's Grand Slam on Monday morning show. That's it. That's exactly what we're doing right now. Sticking with rugby, our own Dara Smith-Nocton's chat with Ian Keatley. Have a super time on this St. Patrick's Day Eve.
Okay, you're very welcome back to OTB AM. I'm here with Ian Keatley, man himself. How are you, Ian?
I'm good there. How's things?
Not too bad, not too bad. Can't complain. Thanks for taking the time with me. I presume, like the rest of us, you tuned in on Sunday to the game. What did you think?
Yeah, it was some game, wasn't it? It had all the range of emotions, the questions, what are they going to do? But ultimately, Ireland came up with the answers, didn't they? And it's actually so nice to watch an Ireland team, and all these things happen to them, and they just know how to respond, and they didn't panic, and they just finish off the game so strong. You think Scotland in the first half, they were quite creative, they were making chances. They scored one nice try with Hugh Jones, and you're like, oh, they're going to get another few chances. And then you see Ireland, I think it was after 20 minutes I was watching them. The Scottish and the Irish teams they're both out on their feet, which when you're watching on TV, you don't understand, you don't see it from TV, the intensity and the hits and how much work is being done. But for Ireland, like, to finish off the second half, they just looked like they're getting stronger and stronger, even with all the stuff that was going on. And I know chatting to Paul O'Connell, like, they strive for this unbelievable fitness, this next level of fitness, and you could just see it in the match that Scotland just had no answers.
A very hectic game, I suppose, especially with the injuries very early on. And probably the biggest talking point from the game was Van de Fleer and Cian Healy sharing the hooker duties. Something I did want to ask you was if there was ever a scenario in your international career where the coach asked you or the captain asked you, can we stick you in a certain position? What would be the last position you'd want to end up at during a game like that? I know yourself being a bit of a utility back at times.
Yeah, well, obviously, if you're a utility back, I think anywhere in the front row, if you're gonna be asked to play there. It's actually, I've never had it. I never had it in my international career. I was actually a sub one time for Ireland, and I came on the wing against Italy. I think it was 2017. I came on the wing. I think it was when Craig Gilroy came on and scored the hat trick. So I came on then on the wing, but no, never. I played at number 9 for a club for Munster. Played at 12. I've played at full back. So, but never. Nothing in the forwards now. I don't think. I think I stayed well away from there. But like on that thing with Cian Healy, like Cian Healy played. He was on my senior schools team, and he actually played hooker. But we had 3 really good props. Cian was one of them. And just to try and get them all on the pitch, we put Cian in hooker. But our number 8 actually threw in the ball. He was a very good thrower as well. So so funny enough, like Cian. I know it's completely different from schools level to the peak international, but he had played there before. And I think chatting to him at the start of the year, they actually did want him to try and go into hooker, not to throw in, but for this reason. So I think, I know we're all saying that it's been crazy that Cian had to go in hooker, but I think it's just really good planning from the Irish coaches that they've had this plan, because if Cian wasn't able to go in hooker, they would have had to go down to 14 men. So I know everyone's saying like it was great by Cian and Josh, but I think it's all been a touch of class from the coaching staff, that they knew that these possibilities could happen. That if we lose 2 hookers, we need someone to be able to go in hooker. And even if you look at Josh's throwing, it was spot on the money. Like it wasn't a wobbly ball. It wasn't, the rotations on the ball were perfect. So I'd be very shocked if he hadn't been practicing as well.
Certainly is a testament to Andy Farrell's brilliance, and how important, from an outsider's perspective of someone who's been in that squad, how important is a coach, and a coach like Andy Farrell, to the success of an Ireland team? Because Ireland at the moment are probably at the best place they've been, a lot of people are saying, ever. So how important is a coach that setup?
Yeah, I think he's done an unbelievable job. Worked with Andy Farrell before, and he came into Munster, and like he's a straight shooter, but like he gets his points across. Nothing ever phases him or panicking. It's all about it's almost like just get the job done. But you can really see from this team that they've really, they don't let anything panic them, but they still have planned for the worst case scenarios. And I just know in the future or in the past, when Irish teams are going well and people go, oh, well, they haven't been tested or they haven't faced this. You can't say that about this Irish team, have you? Like they've gone down to New Zealand, they've won a series down there, backed against the wall against Scotland. They've beaten number 2 in the world in France. Now, probably people will be like, oh, well, they haven't beaten France in the Stade de France. That's probably their next question mark that someone will bring up, or like they just seem to have everything covered, every base covered, and they've just got really good strength and depth, and they're not playing negative rugby. They're playing really smart, intelligent rugby. Like people saying like, oh, they've gone away from the kicking game. They haven't. If we watch how that game swung on the weekend, it was that contestable that was put in just outside the 22. And I remember the commentators going, what are they doing a contestable? And then Mac Hansen gets up, wins it. Momentum completely changed, and a few more like they score. So they're just a very smart team. They're just playing to the space. They're creating good space, but they're really good decision makers on the pitch.
And obviously, do you look at a team like that and think, yourself, you're 2 years younger than the starting fly half at the moment? Do you feel like a bit of, not so much jealousy as much as envy, just to play in a team like that with the form they're playing on?
Yeah, of course. Like I think every player, whether they're starting off in their career, they're during their career at the moment, or if they've just retired. Like you could even look at myself, or even if you look at like Jamie Heaslip or Roy Best, who have just recently retired as well. I'd say they'd be quite envious. They're like, whoa, that game plan, the way that they're playing looks quite enjoyable. So yeah, you do get a bit of envy, of course. I think that's the competitor in all, not just rugby players, but all sports people. Like you always want to be involved in the good times, or playing on good teams, or playing attractive styles. So yeah, there is a bit of enviness now. I don't lose sleep over it or anything like that, but yeah, you do. You kind of wish that you'd played in a team like that. 1 to 15, 1 to 23. There's no let up. So, but I'm starting to I've retired nearly 2 years, so I'm starting to come across more so as starting to become a fan again. Kind of taking myself out of the rugby side and going, okay, I'm actually enjoying the way they're playing, trying to dissect what they're doing, and going, geez, that's very good what they're doing there. It's very clever. So, but the thing is, everything that they're doing, it's not complicated. It's really simple basics done really, really well, and good decision makers on the pitch under that pressure. Like, I think Mike Tyson's favourite saying is everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the face, but these guys have a good plan and they're executing it while getting punched in the face. So,
were you ever tempted to make the move to Leinster at any point in your career, being from Dublin yourself, especially?
I went to Connacht for 3 seasons, and then at the end of my last season, I got offers to go to Leinster or to Munster, and Joe Schmidt was on to me saying, "Oh, listen, Johnny kind of just came through then. He wasn't like when I went to Connacht, like he wasn't the starting guy in Leinster who still had like Contapomi there and stuff like that. So he was only kind of just coming through. So I remember Joe Schmidt rang me up and said, "Oh, would you be interested in coming back to Leinster? You're from Dublin. Come back home. It'll be you and Johnny Sexton competing against each other." And then I kind of like took the phone call and just sat down and thought about it. But my thinking of it was, if I went down to Munster, obviously I could sit behind Raj for a year or two, learn off him. But then like Raj was like 11 years older than me. So I was there going, well, like Raj's not going to be around forever. And then once Raj is gone, like I felt there's a big opportunity there to cement myself as obviously first choice for Munster. And it was more like, don't get me wrong, I would have loved to have come home to like your family, your friends, your mom and dad, like, because ultimately that's they're the people who've shaped you since you've been for the first 20, 21 years of my life. So it was a tough thought, but I just thought Munster was a great club, really good people. You had like unbelievable players there, and I just thought that I could go there and have a really good career there with learning from Raj. But then when Raj moved on, that hopefully that I could become the number one. So that was it was more business kind of decision rather than going home decision.
I wanted to talk about your Connacht days. You mentioned it there. It's kind of, for me personally, as a guy with a dad from Roscommon, I went to a lot of games growing up in the sports ground, and you were a bit of I would myself labelled you as an adopted local star. When I was younger, I didn't even realise you were from Dublin. It just seemed like this was Connacht's star boy. Do you look back on those days with gratitude and even a little bit of regret you may having to stuck it out 1 or 2 seasons longer?
No, I loved Connacht. So I worked with Eric Elwood and Dan McFarland with the Ireland under-20s. And we won a Grand Slam with Ireland under-20s in 2007, I think it was, yeah. So then went back to Leinster, and I had a really bad injury in my back. And we got scans, we got everything, they couldn't decipher what it was. And then I remember I kind of fell out with the Leinster physios because they almost said that I was faking it. And I was like, this was the Leinster physio at the time, and I was like, I'm not faking this. Like, why would I fake this? Anyway, I went to see my own specialist, and he said, I'll get you right. So did really work with him. A guy called Mike Carswell, actually. A lot of the Leinster players still go to him. And then got better working with Dan Tobin. And then Eric and Dan, even though I had a poor season that season just through injury, Eric and Dan said, listen, would you still like to come to Connacht? Like, we've got full potential in you. Talk to Leinster, they were saying like you'll stay in the academy for 1 more year and then you progress on. But I saw like players like Fionn Carr, who had done 3 years in the Leinster academy and then kind of been let go. And I was like, I don't want to be let go, and like this could be my only opportunity. So when they said to come down to Connacht for a full contract, like that's what you dream as, like when you're a youngster, like just being able to play professional rugby. So Connacht gave me that chance to become a professional, and Andy Dunn was the 10 there at the time, and I just knew that I was going to get loads of game time, and I ended up doing it in 3 seasons. I played like 80 matches for Connacht, played in some unbelievable matches, played against Johnny Wilkinson, my childhood hero, for Toulon in the semi-final of European Cup, and absolutely loved the experience and what they were kind of selling to me, that they had a 3-year plan to grow and develop this team around the likes of myself, Sean Corona and Fionn Carr. They obviously had Gavin Duffy and John Muldoon there at the time. So you kind of got excited by what they were trying to sell you. But after 3 years, it was kind of, we still had good success, but I just felt that it was kind of now or never. I was 23, 24. What was it the best for me to move on. And especially when I was living with Sean Cronin and Fionn Carr, and they all have offers to move on as well, and you're kind of discussing that, what's the best. And I think Sean, well, the three of us discussed that it's probably the best for the three of us to move on, which was tough for Connacht that the three of us kind of moved on altogether, but we had to kind of be a bit selfish and think about ourselves. So
I did want to ask you if there was a moment or a game or an accolade that you if I'm going to make you pick one that you could remember for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Oh God, I can't pick one. That's pretty hard. Like as I said,
force here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, because you're involved in so many like the 2000. Like I was involved in 2018 Grand Slam, but I didn't set foot in the field on the field. So you're like, okay, you're kind of proud of being involved in it, but like, okay, then like there's so many achievements with Munster, but they're not trophies. So you're like, okay, are they like? Do you want to like look at them? And then you start going back to like your early start of your career. Like I won a Grand Slam with the Ireland under-20s, won a Leinster School Senior Cup, which like back then, like I went into the school when I was 9-10. All you're living up for is Senior Cup. You're like, so like that's an unbelievable. Now it's changed obviously, but like back then that was the biggest thing in the world to win a Leinster School Senior Cup, and then to win an Ireland under-20 Grand Slam. I think it was the first time Ireland had won a Grand Slam at underage against two teams who, like, it was under-20s, but they were just changing from under-21 to under-20. So France and England both played, or France and Italy, I think, both played under-21 teams. So to beat them, that was incredible. And then, yeah, at the end, the next year, getting your first Irish cap was pretty impressive. But also, like, when everyone thought that my career was kind of done, and to come back and then to be involved in that Ireland 2018 Grand Slam, that's an achievement for me, because everyone said that I was done in 2015 and 16. I got booed off against Leicester. So for me to come back from where I was in a pretty dark place, wanting to give up rugby, for me to come back from that and to get back to play for Ireland, that's kind of an achievement without like actually lifting a trophy or something like that. So I'm kind of like proud of those little things from where I knew I was mentally and wanting to give up, to fight and to get back, and to as I said, that was an achievement for me, just to come out of that dark place.
And, I mentioned earlier you're only 35 at the moment, 2 years younger than Johnny Sexton. You're playing in the Irish Legends versus English Legends game on Paddy's Day. It's almost weird to call you an Irish legend at the age of 35. Do you think that's a bit of a strange one for yourself, to be called an Irish legend?
Yeah, I probably do feel a bit young to be playing it, but I like. First of all, it's a great cause. Like you're playing, and especially this year, like with the passing away of like someone I've worked with quite closely over the last 2 years, Tom Tierney. Like we'll be playing for him, and even Brian O'Brien, who passed away, who was a legend down in Limerick. But yeah, me and Tom, like I played in it last year as well. And Tom said that he was going to get the video of it and analyse my play and stuff